In this video, we're going to be breaking down interesting Rick and Morty facts. Let's get started with the first one. First up, we got Rick and Morty, started as a crude Back to the Future parody called Doc and Marty. Before Rick and Morty became one of the most popular animated shows on television, it existed as something completely different. The show's origins trace back to 2006, when co-creator Justin Roiland created a short animated film called The Real Animated Adventures of Doc and Marty. This crude parody was made for Channel 101, a monthly short film festival in Los Angeles that was co-founded by Dan Harmon, who would later become Roiland's partner in creating Rick and Morty. Channel 101 was a unique festival where filmmakers could submit short films designed as TV pilots. The audience at the festival would then vote on which shows should continue as series. Justin Roiland had been submitting content to Channel 101 since about a year after its launch in 2004. His work was known for containing shock humor that often confused audiences, but Dan Harmon saw something special in Roiland's style and took a liking to his work. The creation of Doc and Marty came at a specific moment in Roiland's career. In 2006, he had just been fired from working on a television series that he found creatively limiting. Frustrated with this experience, Roiland decided to channel his creative energy into making something for Channel 101. At the time, Roiland was also dealing with another issue. He had created a series called House of Cosby's that was getting cease and desist letters from Bill Cosby's lawyers. This legal pressure was forcing him to stop making that show. Originally, Roiland wanted to create Doc and Marty as a form of protest against these copyright issues. He thought it would be funny to make an extremely vulgar parody of Back to the Future characters Doc Brown and Marty McFly. The idea was to create something so outrageous that it would be a way to poke fun at getting cease and desist letters. Roiland even wanted to call the short Back to the Future the new official Universal Studios to make the parody aspect crystal clear. However, something unexpected happened during the creation process. As Roiland was editing the audio for the short, he became really interested in the character voices he was creating. He found himself genuinely enjoying the impressions he was doing for the two characters. At that point, Roiland made a decision to drop the protest angle and focus on developing these voices into something more substantial. To avoid potential lawsuits from Universal Pictures, he changed the character names from Doc and Marty to Doc Smith and Marty McDonald's. The original Doc and Marty short was extremely crude and featured content that would never appear in Rick and Morty. Dan Harmon himself would later describe these shorts as a bastardization, a pornographic vandalization of what Rick and Morty would eventually become. The content was deliberately provocative and shocking, designed to push boundaries in a way that Roiland thought was funny at the time. Despite the crude nature of the material, the audience at Channel 101 reacted strongly to it. People had wild reactions to the short, and Roiland began creating more episodes featuring these characters. Over time, the shorts evolved beyond their original Back to the Future parody roots. Roiland created a total of 4 Doc and Marty shorts for various purposes, including one to promote a comic book and another as a fake Gatorade commercial. One of the most important elements that carried over from Doc and Marty to Rick and Morty was the distinctive burping sound that Rick makes. This wasn't originally planned as a character trait. Roiland later explained that the burping began as an accident during recording. He was improvising the voice and happened to burp during a line, and he liked how it sounded. This accidental vocal quirk would become one of Rick Sanchez's most recognizable characteristics. After creating the Doc and Marty shorts, both Roiland and Harmon went their separate ways for a while. Harmon created and produced Community, the NBC sitcom that would run for several seasons. Meanwhile, Roiland worked primarily in voice acting, contributing to shows like Disney's Fish Hooks and Cartoon Network's Adventure Time. The Doc and Marty characters seemed like they might remain a strange footnote in both creators' careers. Everything changed in 2012 when Dan Harmon was briefly fired from Community. Around this same time, Adult Swim was actively looking for new programming. The network wanted to find a hit show that could appeal to a broader primetime audience while still maintaining the creative edge Adult Swim was known for. They approached Harmon about developing something for them. At first, Harmon wasn't sure Adult Swim was the right fit for his style. He was also unfamiliar with animation production, and his approach to creating television focused more on dialogue, characters, and storytelling rather than visual animation. Instead of pitching his own idea, Harmon called Justin Roiland to ask if he had any concepts for an animated series. Roiland immediately thought of the Doc and Marty characters. He suggested they could adapt these characters into a proper half-hour show, renaming them Rick and Morty. The name change was more than just removing the obvious Back to the Future references. It represented a fresh start for the characters, allowing them to become original creations rather than simple parodies. Roiland initially envisioned the show having 11-minute episodes, similar to how shows like SpongeBob SquarePants are structured with 2 segments per half hour. However, Adult Swim pushed for full half-hour episodes because they were more marketable and fit better with their programming goals. Harmon figured out that the best way to extend these voices into a longer format would be to build a complete family around the characters. This led to the creation of the Smith family, with Rick becoming Morty's grandfather at the suggestion of Adult Swim executive Nick Weidenfeld. By this point in his career, Roiland had experienced significant disappointment in television. Before developing Rick and Morty, he had created 3 failed animated pilots for Fox, and he was feeling burned out on the development process. He was initially resistant to taking notes from others on his pitch because he had been let down so many times before. The transition from Doc and Marty to Rick and Morty involved significant changes. While the core dynamic of a genius scientist and his nervous companion remained, everything else was reimagined. Time travel became interdimensional travel. The characters were redesigned to remove iconic Back to the Future elements like Marty's red vest. The crude humor of the original shorts was replaced with more sophisticated storytelling that balanced dark comedy with genuine emotional moments. For years, the creators of Rick and Morty tried to distance the show from its Doc and Marty origins. During the production of the first season, Roiland was actually worried that Universal Pictures might discover the original shorts and take legal action. Because of this concern, there were very few direct connections between Doc and Marty and Rick and Morty in the early episodes. There were even plans to have Doc and Marty appear as members of the Council of Ricks, but these plans were ultimately abandoned. However, as the show gained popularity and became more established, the creators became more comfortable acknowledging these origins. Starting in Season 2, subtle references to Doc and Marty began appearing. In the episode Total Recall, there's a flashback showing Rick enthusiastically screaming, "Lick, lick, lick my balls," as a catchphrase, which was a reference to content from the original shorts. In another episode, a drawing that Tiny Rick makes resembles the original Doc Smith character design. The most direct acknowledgement came in Season 5 with the episode Mort Dinner, Rick Andre. The cold opening of this episode actually shows a brief scene from the original Doc and Marty short displayed on a crystal, finally bringing the show's origins full circle and acknowledging them openly to fans. Adult Swim even released an edited version of the original Doc and Marty short on the official Rick and Morty YouTube channel in April 2019. This version removed the most inappropriate content while still showing fans where the characters came from. The original, unedited version can still be found on other platforms for those curious about the show's roots. The transformation from Doc and Marty to Rick and Morty represents one of the most dramatic evolutions in television history. What started as a crude, shocking parody created partly out of frustration became a critically acclaimed animated series that has won Emmy Awards, spawned a massive merchandising empire, and created a devoted fan base. The show has been praised for its originality, creativity, humor, and surprisingly deep exploration of philosophical themes about existence, family, and meaning. This journey from vulgar parody to respected television show demonstrates how creative ideas can evolve when given the right support and development. The core elements that made Doc and Marty interesting to Dan Harmon in 2006 were refined and expanded into something far more substantial. While the original shorts are barely recognizable compared to the polished episodes of Rick and Morty, they were the necessary first step in creating something truly special. Rick and Morty began as The Real Animated Adventures of Doc and Marty, a crude 2006 parody of Back to the Future created by Justin Roiland for Channel 101, a short film festival co-founded by Dan Harmon. Originally made as a protest against copyright issues, Roiland became attached to the character voices he created and developed multiple shorts. Years later, when Adult Swim approached Harmon for a show in 2012, Roiland suggested adapting these characters. They renamed them Rick and Morty, redesigned everything, and transformed the crude parody into a sophisticated animated series that would win Emmy Awards and become a cultural phenomenon. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how the pilot episode script was written in just 6 hours. The creation of Rick and Morty's pilot episode is one of the most remarkable stories in television history. What would become the foundation for one of the most successful animated series of the 21st century was written in a single afternoon, with Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland completing the entire first draft in approximately 6 hours. This incredible feat of creative productivity happened under unique circumstances that pushed both creators to work at lightning speed. In May 2012, Adult Swim unveiled its development slate, which included a pilot from Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland. The network was actively searching for programming that could appeal to a broader primetime audience while maintaining the creative edge that Adult Swim was known for. After seeing the potential in the Doc and Marty characters, Adult Swim executives gave Harmon and Roiland the green light to develop a pilot episode. The setting for this remarkable writing session was Dan Harmon's office on the Paramount Pictures lot. At the time, Harmon was still working on Community, the NBC sitcom he had created. However, this wasn't just any office. It was completely unfurnished and empty. There were no chairs, no desks, no comfortable furniture of any kind. Just an empty room with nothing but space and the two creators with their laptops. The circumstances that led to this rushed writing session were very specific. Harmon and Roiland had just finished their pitch meeting with Nick Weidenfeld, who was the head of program development at Adult Swim. The meeting had gone well, and they had successfully sold their idea for the show. As Weidenfeld was walking out of the office, the two creators were sitting on the floor with their laptops, cross-legged in the unfurnished space. Harmon was about to get up and go home. It seemed like the natural thing to do after a successful pitch meeting. They could celebrate, take a break, and come back to write the pilot script at a later date. However, Justin Roiland had a different idea. He stopped Harmon from leaving and made a crucial observation. Roiland pointed out that if they left the office and went home, it might take them 3 months to actually write the pilot script. This concern wasn't unfounded. Both creators understood how the television development process typically works. There would be endless back-and-forth discussions, scheduling conflicts, and the general slowness that comes with any collaborative creative project. Roiland knew his own tendency to procrastinate, and he recognized that this moment represented a unique opportunity. The ideas were fresh in their minds, the excitement from the successful pitch was still energizing them, and they had dedicated time available. The timing was particularly important because of Harmon's commitments to Community. He was about to spend the next 6 months deeply involved in making the 3rd season of that show. Once he dove into Community production, there would be very little time or mental energy available for developing Rick and Morty. The pilot script could easily get pushed to the back burner, delayed month after month as other responsibilities took priority. Roiland explained his thinking to Harmon. He said that for some reason, everything felt right at that moment. The concept was clear in his head, and he had the creative energy to tackle it immediately. Rather than letting that momentum fade, Roiland suggested they should write the entire pilot right then and there. They shouldn't leave the office until they had a completed first draft. Harmon agreed with this plan, and the two creators settled in for what would become a legendary writing session. They sat on the floor of that empty, unfurnished office with their laptops and began hammering out the script. There were no comfortable chairs to lean back in, no desk to write on, just two people sitting cross-legged on the floor, completely focused on bringing Rick and Morty to life. The writing process itself was remarkably smooth. The duo had worked out the basic structure of the story during their pitch to Adult Swim. They knew they wanted to introduce Rick Sanchez as an alcoholic genius scientist and Morty Smith as his anxious teenage grandson. They understood the family dynamic they wanted to establish, with Rick living with his daughter Beth's family and taking Morty on dangerous interdimensional adventures. In interviews years later, Harmon would reflect on this writing session with amazement. He told the Los Angeles Times that the first draft was completed in about 6 or 8 hours. The exact time varies slightly in different retellings, but all accounts agree it was completed in a single day, in one continuous session. There were no breaks to go home, no pauses to sleep on ideas, just pure creative output from start to finish. The content they created during those 6 hours would become the pilot episode that aired on the 2nd of December 2013. The episode introduces all the key elements that would define the series. It opens with a drunk Rick waking up Morty in the middle of the night, taking him on what appears to be a destructive joyride. The episode establishes Rick's nihilistic worldview, Morty's anxiety and moral concerns, and the family tensions that would drive much of the show's drama. The pilot also introduced the show's unique blend of science fiction concepts and crude humor. The main plot involves Rick taking Morty to another dimension to collect mega seeds, which Morty has to hide in his rectum to get through customs. Meanwhile, Morty's parents, Jerry and Beth, contemplate sending Rick to a nursing home, believing he's a bad influence on their son. The episode efficiently sets up the core conflicts and relationships that would sustain the series for years to come. What makes this 6-hour writing session even more impressive is the quality of what was produced. The pilot episode wasn't just a rough draft that needed extensive rewrites. While there were certainly revisions and polish added later, the fundamental structure and most of the dialogue created during that session made it into the final episode. The script was strong enough that Adult Swim officially picked up the series in October 2012, just a few months after the pilot was written. The writing process demonstrated the creative chemistry between Harmon and Roiland. Harmon brought his expertise in story structure and character development, honed through years of creating television, including Community. He understood how to build a narrative that would engage audiences and establish ongoing conflicts. Roiland contributed his unique comedic sensibility and the character voices that would become iconic. Together, they created something that was greater than what either could have achieved alone. The empty office where this historic writing session took place became part of the show's mythology. It was the same office that Harmon used for his work on Community, but it was unfurnished at that particular time. The image of these two creators sitting on the floor, hunched over their laptops, determined not to leave until they had a complete script, captures the dedication and creative urgency that would come to define Rick and Morty's production. This rapid writing process was actually unusual for Harmon, who was known for being meticulous and sometimes slow in his creative process. He had developed a famous story structure technique called the story circle, which he used to carefully craft narratives. The fact that he was willing to write the entire pilot in one sitting shows how much he believed in the concept and how important he felt it was to capture the energy of that moment. The success of this writing session also established a template for how Harmon and Roiland would work together, at least in the early days of the show. They proved they could collaborate intensively when needed, pushing through creative challenges to produce quality material under time pressure. This ability would serve them well as they developed the first season of Rick and Morty, which consisted of 11 episodes, including the pilot. Looking back at this moment from the perspective of Rick and Morty's massive success, it's remarkable to think that the foundation for everything that followed was laid in just 6 hours. The show would go on to win Emmy Awards in 2018 and 2020. It would inspire countless memes, create a devoted fan base, and even cause riots at McDonald's restaurants. A massive 70-episode deal would be signed after the third season, guaranteeing the show's future for years to come. The pilot episode that emerged from that 6-hour writing session premiered on the 2nd of December 2013 and was viewed by approximately 1.1 million people. Critics responded positively to the show's unique blend of science fiction, dark humor, and surprising emotional depth. The pilot successfully introduced audiences to Rick and Morty's world and convinced Adult Swim to order a full season. In television production, pilot scripts often take weeks or months to develop. Writers' rooms full of people spend countless hours discussing plot points, character motivations, and dialogue. Scripts go through numerous drafts, with network executives providing notes and demanding changes. The fact that Rick and Morty's pilot came together so quickly and with so little revision needed is almost unheard of in the industry. This story also highlights the importance of seizing creative moments when they arrive. If Roiland hadn't insisted they write the script immediately, if Harmon had gone home as he originally planned, the entire trajectory of Rick and Morty might have been different. The pilot might have been written eventually, but it could have lost the energy and clarity that came from that focused, urgent writing session. The 6-hour pilot writing session has become one of the most frequently told behind-the-scenes stories about Rick and Morty. It appears in interviews, documentaries, and articles about the show's creation. Fans love hearing about this moment because it seems to capture something essential about the show itself: the willingness to take risks, the ability to create something meaningful quickly, and the power of creative collaboration when everything aligns properly. For aspiring writers and creators, this story serves as both inspiration and a reminder that sometimes the best work comes from pushing through and completing something rather than endlessly perfecting it. Harmon and Roiland could have spent months developing the pilot, second-guessing every choice and polishing every line. Instead, they trusted their instincts, worked intensively, and created something that would launch one of the most successful animated series in television history. The pilot episode that was written in that unfurnished office on the Paramount Pictures lot became the first episode of a show that has now aired over 80 episodes across 8 seasons, with more seasons confirmed through at least season 12. It introduced characters and concepts that would be developed and expanded over years of storytelling. And it all started with 2 creators sitting on a floor, refusing to leave until they had captured their vision on the page. Rick and Morty's pilot episode script was written in just 6 hours in Dan Harmon's unfurnished community office on the Paramount Pictures lot. After successfully pitching the show to Adult Swim in May 2012, Justin Roiland convinced Dan Harmon not to leave, arguing that leaving would delay the script for months. With Harmon about to spend 6 months on Community Season 3, they sat cross-legged on the empty office floor with their laptops and wrote the entire first draft in one continuous session. This remarkably fast writing session produced a strong script that needed minimal revisions and became the foundation for one of television's most successful animated series. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how Adult Swim ordered a massive 70-episode deal after Season 3. One of the most significant moments in Rick and Morty's history came on the 10th of May 2018 when Adult Swim announced something unprecedented in modern television. The network ordered a staggering 70 new episodes of Rick and Morty as part of a long-term deal with creators Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland. This massive renewal represented more than double the number of episodes the show had produced up to that point, effectively guaranteeing the show's future for years to come. To understand how extraordinary this deal was, it helps to look at where Rick and Morty stood at the time. The show had completed 3 seasons, totaling 31 episodes. It had grown from a cult favorite to a mainstream phenomenon, consistently delivering strong ratings for Adult Swim. The Season 3 finale had achieved the highest ratings in Adult Swim's history, and Rick and Morty had claimed the title of the #1 comedy across all of television with millennials in 2017. The show had become more than just a television program. It had evolved into a multi-platform sensation with massive success not just on television but across digital platforms, gaming, live streaming, retail experiences, and fan events. The cultural impact was undeniable, with Rick and Morty references appearing everywhere from social media to mainstream news coverage. The show had transcended its Adult Swim origins to become a genuine pop culture phenomenon. However, the path to this 70-episode deal was not smooth or simple. In fact, it came after a period of significant tension and uncertainty. Contract negotiations between Adult Swim and the creators had become complicated and drawn out. Dan Harmon himself had noted publicly that negotiations had gotten complicated this time around. The delay in getting Season 4 greenlit had frustrated fans who were eager for more episodes. The relationship between Harmon and Roiland had also become strained by this point. According to later interviews, tensions between the 2 creators had begun emerging after the success of the first season. By the 3rd season, things had deteriorated significantly. Roiland had reportedly stopped showing up to writing sessions, though he continued to voice the 2 main characters. A mediator had even been brought in to try to smooth things over between them. Despite these behind-the-scenes difficulties, both creators recognized the value of what they had created together. When it came time to negotiate the 70-episode deal, they put aside their differences to work together. Harmon later described it as feeling like he and Roiland were in love again because they were united in dealing with network executives and discussing their potential financial future. The prospect of securing such a massive deal brought them back together, at least temporarily. The announcement of the 70-episode order sent shockwaves through the television industry. This type of massive upfront commitment was extremely rare in contemporary television, especially for animated shows. Most series are renewed 1 season at a time, typically for 10 to 14 episodes. Even successful shows usually only get guaranteed for 1 or 2 seasons ahead. A 70-episode order was virtually unheard of. For context, Rick and Morty had been producing seasons of about 10 to 11 episodes. Early on, Harmon had expressed interest in making longer seasons, at one point hoping for 14 episodes per season. If the show continued with 10-episode seasons, this 70-episode deal would carry it through at least 7 more seasons, potentially bringing the total to 10 seasons. If they managed 14-episode seasons, it could mean 5 more seasons. Christina Miller, who was president of Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, and Boomerang at the time, emphasized what this deal represented. She stated that Rick and Morty is truly what a modern-day hit looks like across multiple screens and multiple touchpoints. The network wasn't just buying episodes of a television show. They were investing in a franchise that generated revenue and engagement across multiple platforms. The deal was announced in a characteristically irreverent way that fit the show's brand. Harmon and Roiland posted a video on their Instagram accounts showing them together in a shower at Harmon's home, celebrating the news. This absurd announcement perfectly captured the show's spirit while also demonstrating that the creators were willing to work together to promote their success. Roiland also shared a drawing on Twitter showing the text, "70 more episodes," with a simple illustration. His tweet acknowledged the fans who had been anxiously waiting for news about the show's future, writing, "More Rick and Morty coming. Looking forward to all the tweets asking where it is." This showed that the creators were well aware of fan frustration with the long waits between seasons. For fans, this 70-episode order was both thrilling and somewhat surreal. It meant they were guaranteed years of new Rick and Morty content. There would be no more anxiety about whether the show would be renewed after each season. The deal provided security and stability that few television shows ever achieve. At the same time, fans knew that animation takes time, and 70 episodes would take years to produce. The financial details of the deal were not publicly disclosed, but industry observers noted it must have been extremely lucrative for both creators. The show had proven its value through ratings, merchandising, and cultural impact. Adult Swim was willing to make a significant investment to keep Rick and Morty as a cornerstone of their programming for the foreseeable future. One interesting aspect of the 70-episode deal was that it didn't specify exactly how these episodes would be structured. Would they be divided into 7 10-episode seasons? 5 14-episode seasons? Some other configuration? The flexibility in the deal allowed the creators and network to figure out the best approach as production continued. This ambiguity gave everyone room to adapt to changing circumstances. To celebrate the deal, Adult Swim also announced that the Rickmobile would return for a countrywide tour beginning the 17th of May 2018 in Atlanta, Georgia. This mobile pop-up shop would visit more than 50 locations, including San Diego Comic-Con in July, offering exclusive custom-designed collectibles. The tour was a way to bring the celebration directly to fans and capitalize on the excitement surrounding the announcement. The 70-episode order fundamentally changed how Rick and Morty operated as a production. Previously, the creators and writers had to work with the uncertainty of not knowing if there would be another season. They had to balance telling complete stories with leaving threads open for potential future episodes. Now, with 70 episodes guaranteed, they could plan long-term story arcs with confidence. This security also had practical benefits for the production process. The animation studio Bardell Entertainment in Vancouver could commit resources and staff knowing they had years of work ahead. Voice actors could plan their schedules around guaranteed recording sessions. Writers could be hired with the knowledge that there would be sustained employment. The entire production pipeline could operate more efficiently. However, the deal also came with pressures. Adult Swim's massive investment meant they would expect consistent quality and ratings performance. The creators would need to sustain the creativity and innovation that had made the show successful over 70 episodes, which is a significant challenge. Some fans worried that such a large order might lead to declining quality as the creators ran out of ideas. The 70-episode deal also represented a shift in how Adult Swim approached programming. Traditionally, the network had been willing to take risks on experimental shows, giving them short runs to prove themselves. This massive commitment showed that when a show became a genuine hit, Adult Swim was willing to invest heavily to secure its future. Rick and Morty had become too valuable to risk losing. In the years following the announcement, the production of these 70 episodes has proceeded, though not without complications. The creators aimed to produce more consistent yearly releases rather than the long gaps that had frustrated fans after earlier seasons. Season 4 premiered in November 2019, split into 2 parts. Season 5 followed in 2021, and Season 6 inches 2022. The most significant disruption to the 70-episode plan came in January 2023, when Justin Roiland was fired from the show amid domestic violence charges and other allegations. Despite this major change, Adult Swim confirmed they would continue with the full 70-episode order. The show would proceed with new voice actors Ian Cardoni and Harry Belden replacing Roiland as Rick and Morty, demonstrating the network's commitment to honoring the deal. Season 7 premiered in October 2023 with the new voice actors, and Season 8 followed in May 2025. As of 2025, the show has aired over 80 episodes, meaning a significant portion of the 70-episode deal has been fulfilled. The series has also been renewed beyond the original 70 episodes, with announcements confirming the show will continue through at least season 12. The impact of the 70-episode deal extends beyond just Rick and Morty. It set a precedent in the animation industry and television more broadly about the value of proven hits. Other creators and networks looked at this deal as a model for how to secure long-term commitments for successful properties. It showed that animated programming could command the same level of investment as prestigious live-action series. For Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, the 70-episode deal represented the culmination of years of work building Rick and Morty from a crude web series into a television powerhouse. Despite their personal differences, they had created something valuable enough to command this unprecedented commitment. The deal validated their creative vision and ensured their creation would continue influencing popular culture for years. Looking back at the May 2018 announcement, it's clear that the 70-episode deal was a watershed moment for Rick and Morty. It transformed the show from a successful animated series into a guaranteed long-term franchise. It provided financial security for everyone involved and creative freedom to tell ambitious stories. Most importantly for fans, it promised years of new adventures with Rick, Morty, and the rest of the Smith family across infinite dimensions. The deal also reflected broader changes in how television content was being valued and produced in the streaming era. Networks and platforms were increasingly willing to make large upfront commitments to secure content that could drive subscriber growth and retention. Rick and Morty had proven it could deliver both critical acclaim and commercial success, making it worth the substantial investment. As the show continues working through these 70 episodes and beyond, the 2018 deal remains one of the most important moments in its history. It represented Adult Swim's belief in the show's enduring appeal and the creator's ability to continue delivering quality content. Whether Rick and Morty can maintain its creative edge across so many episodes remains to be seen, but the 70-episode deal ensured it would have every opportunity to try. On the 10th of May 2018, Adult Swim announced an unprecedented 70-episode deal for Rick and Morty with Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, more than doubling the show's existing 31 episodes. The announcement followed complicated negotiations, with tensions between the creators who had stopped speaking regularly by season 3, though they reunited to secure the deal. The massive commitment, rare in modern television, guaranteed the show through at least 7 more seasons and fundamentally changed production planning. Despite Justin Roiland's firing in 2023, Adult Swim honored the full 70-episode order with new voice actors, and by 2025 had aired over 80 episodes with renewals confirmed through season 12. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how Rick and Morty won Emmy Awards in 2018 and 2020. Rick and Morty won Emmy Awards in 2018 and 2020. Rick and Morty's critical acclaim reached its highest point when the show won 2 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Animated Program. These victories came in 2018 and 2020, cementing the show's status as not just a cult favorite, but a genuinely award-worthy piece of television. The wins were particularly significant because they came in one of the most competitive categories at the Emmy Awards, where Rick and Morty faced off against some of the most established and beloved animated series in television history. The first Emmy nomination for Rick and Morty came as a surprise to many, including the creators themselves. Despite the show's growing popularity and passionate fan base, animated comedies on cable networks don't always receive recognition from the Television Academy. The Emmys have historically favored long-running network shows like The Simpsons and family-friendly programming. For an irreverent dark comedy on Adult Swim to break through represented a significant shift in how the Academy viewed animated programming. Rick and Morty's first Emmy nomination came for the 2018 Creative Arts Emmy Awards. The show was nominated in the Outstanding Animated Program category for the Season 3 episode, Pickle Rick. This episode had become one of the show's most famous installments, featuring Rick transforming himself into a pickle to avoid family therapy, then creating an exoskeleton from rat parts to survive in the sewers. The episode perfectly showcased the show's ability to combine absurdist humor with genuine character development and emotional depth. The competition for that first nomination was fierce. Rick and Morty was up against established powerhouses, including The Simpsons, which had won this category multiple times over its decades-long run. Bob's Burgers, another Fox animated comedy, was also nominated and had won the award the previous year. Family Guy, one of the most successful animated sitcoms ever created, was in the running. The fifth nominee was Big Hero 6, the series, based on the Disney animated film. The Creative Arts Emmy Awards ceremony took place on Saturday, the 8th of September 2018 at the Microsoft Theater in Los Angeles. These awards are presented separately from the main primetime Emmy Awards and honor technical and artistic achievements across various categories. When Saturday Night Live alumni Molly Shannon and Silicon Valley star Jimmy O. Yang announced that Rick and Morty had won, it marked a major milestone for the show. Justin Roiland accepted the award on behalf of the team, giving a speech that reflected his genuine surprise at winning. He thanked everyone for believing in this weird concept, acknowledging that the show's unusual premise and dark humor could have easily prevented it from finding success. Roiland specifically mentioned Dan Harmon in his acceptance speech, despite the growing tensions between them that would later become public knowledge. The timing of this first Emmy win was somewhat complicated by controversy surrounding Dan Harmon. Earlier in 2018, a disturbing video had surfaced from a 2009 pilot Harmon had created called Daryl, which was a parody of the Dexter series. The video showed Harmon simulating inappropriate acts with a baby doll. Harmon had issued an apology and deleted his Twitter account in response to the backlash. However, the controversy seemed to have little impact on the show's Emmy success. Backstage after winning, Harmon reflected on the achievement with characteristic self-deprecation. He said, "This is never a show that would be award-worthy," expressing genuine surprise that the Television Academy had recognized Rick and Morty. He seemed to suggest that his favorite thing about winning was that other people who worked on the show were being honored for their contributions. Harmon has always emphasized the collaborative nature of animation and the importance of every team member. The 2018 Emmy win validated Rick and Morty's approach to animation and storytelling. It proved that animated shows could tackle complex themes, challenge audiences, and still receive recognition from the industry. The win also helped legitimize Adult Swim as a network capable of producing Emmy-caliber content, not just cult programming for niche audiences. Following the first Emmy win, Rick and Morty was nominated again for the 2020 Emmy Awards. This nomination came for Season 4, specifically for the episode The Vat of Acid episode. This installment featured Rick creating a device that allows Morty to save and reload his life like a video game, leading to tragic consequences when Morty uses it irresponsibly. The episode demonstrated the show's continued ability to blend high-concept science fiction with emotional storytelling. The 2020 competition was equally challenging. Rick and Morty faced The Simpsons once again, along with Bob's Burgers, which had won the category before. Big Mouth, Netflix's controversial coming-of-age animated comedy, was also nominated. The fifth nominee was BoJack Horseman, which was completing its critically acclaimed final season. Many critics and industry observers expected BoJack Horseman to finally win after being nominated multiple times without success. The 2020 Emmy Awards were held during the COVID-19 pandemic, which meant significant changes to how the ceremony was conducted. The Creative Arts Emmy Awards, where the Outstanding Animated Program category is presented, took place virtually. Winners gave acceptance speeches from their homes rather than in a theater full of their peers. Despite these unusual circumstances, the excitement and significance of winning remained unchanged. When Wanda Sykes announced that Rick and Morty had won its second Emmy on Saturday, the 19th of September 2020, it marked another major achievement for the show. Dan Harmon delivered a pre-taped acceptance speech thanking everyone involved with the show. He specifically mentioned the writing team, the editing team, and all the voice actors who brought the characters to life. His speech emphasized the collaborative effort required to produce each episode of Rick and Morty. The second Emmy win was particularly meaningful because it demonstrated that the first victory wasn't a fluke. Rick and Morty had proven it could consistently produce award-worthy content across multiple seasons. The show had maintained its creative edge and storytelling quality even as it dealt with behind-the-scenes challenges and the pressure of increased expectations from fans and the network. The fact that Rick and Morty won for the Vat of Acid episode was especially appropriate. This episode had been praised by critics for its clever use of science fiction concepts to explore themes of consequence, regret, and the value of genuine human experiences. It represented everything that made Rick and Morty special: imaginative premises, dark humor, surprising emotional depth, and willingness to take risks with storytelling. The 2020 win was also notable because it came during a particularly strong year for animated programming. BoJack Horseman had ended its run with a widely acclaimed final season that many considered Emmy-worthy. The fact that Rick and Morty won over BoJack Horseman surprised many critics who had expected the Netflix show to finally receive its long-overdue recognition. The victory demonstrated how highly the Television Academy valued Rick and Morty's unique approach to animation. Both Emmy wins had significant impacts on Rick and Morty's cultural status and industry perception. Awards like these help legitimize animated programming in general, proving that animation is a medium capable of sophisticated storytelling, not just entertainment for children. Rick and Morty's success at the Emmys contributed to a broader recognition of animated shows as worthy of serious critical attention. The Emmy wins also affected how the show was marketed and perceived by potential viewers. Awards provide a stamp of approval that can attract audiences who might not otherwise watch animated comedies on Adult Swim. The Emmy Award-winning label appears in promotional materials and helps the show reach beyond its core fanbase to broader audiences. For the creative team behind Rick and Morty, the Emmy wins represented validation of their artistic choices and hard work. Animation is an incredibly labor-intensive process, with hundreds of people contributing to each episode over months of production. When that work receives recognition from the industry's most prestigious awards, it acknowledges the talent and dedication of everyone involved. The show's Emmy success is particularly impressive when considering the outstanding animated program category's history. The Simpsons dominated this category for years, winning 10 times. Only a handful of other shows have won multiple times, including South Park, Futurama, and Bob's Burgers. For Rick and Morty to join this exclusive club after just a few seasons demonstrated how quickly it had established itself as one of animation's premier shows. Notably, both of Rick and Morty's Emmy wins came before the major upheaval of Justin Roiland's departure from the show. The awards were won with Roiland voicing both title characters, and his performances were part of what made these episodes special. However, the show's continued success after replacing Roiland with new voice actors suggests that the Emmy-winning quality came from the entire creative team, not just one individual. The episodes that won Emmys, Pickle Rick and the Vat of Acid episode, have become some of the most discussed and analyzed in the show's history. Pickle Rick spawned countless memes and cultural references, becoming one of the most recognizable episodes even to people who don't regularly watch the show. The Vat of Acid episode is frequently cited by fans and critics as one of the series' best, demonstrating perfect execution of the show's signature blend of humor and pathos. Rick and Morty has been nominated for Emmy Awards in subsequent years as well, though it hasn't won since 2020. The 2022 Emmy Awards saw the show nominated again, this time competing against new challengers including the critically acclaimed Arcane and Marvel's What If. While it didn't win that year, the continued nominations demonstrate that the Television Academy consistently recognizes Rick and Morty as one of the best animated programs on television. The Emmy wins have become an important part of Rick and Morty's legacy and identity. They represent moments when the show received industry-wide recognition for achievements that fans had been celebrating all along. The awards validated what viewers already knew, that Rick and Morty was doing something special in the world of animated television. Beyond the prestige and recognition, the Emmy wins had practical benefits for the show's production. Award-winning shows often find it easier to attract top talent, whether voice actors, writers, or animators. The Emmy victories helped establish Rick and Morty as a desirable project to work on, ensuring that the show could continue assembling the best creative teams possible. The 2018 and 2020 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Animated Programs stand as highlights in Rick and Morty's history. They mark the moments when the show's artistic ambitions, creative risks, and commitment to quality storytelling received the highest recognition from the television industry. These victories confirmed that Rick and Morty had evolved from an Adult Swim cult hit into one of the most important and influential animated series of the 21st century. For fans, the Emmy wins were satisfying validation of their enthusiasm for the show. For the creators and production team, they were recognition of years of hard work and creative innovation. For the animation industry as a whole, they represented another step forward in the ongoing evolution of what animated television could achieve and how it could be perceived by audiences and critics alike. Rick and Morty won 2 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Animated Program in 2018 and 2020, competing against established shows like The Simpsons, Bob's Burgers, and Family Guy. The first win came for the Season 3 episode Pickle Rick at the 2018 Creative Arts Emmys, with Justin Roiland accepting and thanking everyone for believing in this weird concept. The second victory came in 2020 for the Season 4 episode, the Vat of Acid episode, delivered during a virtual ceremony due to COVID-19. These wins legitimized Rick and Morty as award-worthy television and helped establish animated programming as capable of sophisticated storytelling deserving serious critical recognition. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how the McDonald's Sichuan sauce incident caused riots and police intervention. The McDonald's Sichuan sauce incident caused riots and police intervention. The McDonald's Sichuan sauce controversy stands as one of the most bizarre and chaotic events in Rick and Morty's history. What began as a simple joke in a television episode escalated into real-world pandemonium, with riots, police interventions, and a fast food promotion gone horribly wrong. The incident demonstrated the incredible power of the show's fan base and how quickly internet culture can transform a fictional reference into a genuine cultural phenomenon with real consequences. The story began with the Season 3 premiere of Rick and Morty, titled The Rick Shank Rickdemption, which aired on April Fool's Day 2017. In a surprise move, Adult Swim looped this single episode for an entire day, allowing fans to watch it repeatedly. The episode featured Rick trapped in a simulation controlled by alien beings trying to extract information from his mind. During this episode, Rick becomes obsessed with a specific McDonald's dipping sauce called Sichuan sauce that had been released in 1998 as a promotional tie-in for Disney's animated film Mulan. In the episode, Rick travels back to 1,998 inches, his memories, and orders Chicken McNuggets with Sichuan sauce at a McDonald's. He becomes absolutely fixated on this sauce, declaring at the end of the episode that obtaining Sichuan sauce is his entire motivation for everything he does. Rick delivers an unhinged monologue where he shouts, "I want that Mulan McNugget sauce, Morty. That's my series arc, Morty, if it takes 9 seasons." The passionate delivery of these lines, combined with the absurdity of the concept, immediately captured fans' attention. The Sichuan sauce was a real product that McDonald's had created nearly 20 years earlier. It was a teriyaki-based dipping sauce with hints of soy, garlic, ginger, and mild vinegar. The sauce had been discontinued after the Mulan promotion ended, and most people had completely forgotten about it. However, Rick's obsessive rants about the sauce in the Season 3 premiere suddenly made it culturally relevant again. Fans of Rick and Morty quickly became fascinated with this obscure piece of fast food history. Social media exploded with discussions about the sauce, memes about Rick's obsession, and questions about what it actually tasted like. The enthusiasm was so intense that a Change.org petition was created asking McDonald's to bring back the Sichuan sauce. This petition eventually gathered nearly 50,000 signatures, demonstrating the scale of fan interest. McDonald's took notice of this unexpected attention. The company's social media team began engaging with Rick and Morty fans online, acknowledging the show's reference to their discontinued sauce. In a clever marketing move that seemed perfect at the time, McDonald's decided to send a special gift to the show's creators. They produced a 64-ounce jug of Sichuan sauce and sent it to Justin Roiland and the Rick and Morty writing room, along with a tongue-in-cheek letter. The letter accompanying the sauce was written as if it came from an alternate dimension, playing along with the show's multiverse concept. Former McDonald's chef Mike Haratz wrote, "We'll spare you the physics, but turns out, Dimension C1998M is a dimension where it's always 1,998. This playful acknowledgement of the show delighted fans and seemed like a fun conclusion to the whole Sichuan sauce phenomenon. Justin Roiland shared photos of the jug on Twitter, and the Rick and Morty team clearly enjoyed this corporate response to their joke. However, McDonald's didn't stop there. Seeing the massive engagement and free publicity the sauce reference had generated, the company decided to bring Sichuan sauce back for a limited time. On the 1st of October 2017, McDonald's announced on Twitter that the sauce would be returning for one day only on the 7th of October 2017 at select locations. The announcement stated that customers could receive the sauce with the purchase of buttermilk crispy tenders while supplies lasted. What McDonald's failed to adequately communicate was just how limited these supplies would be. The company had severely underestimated the demand from Rick and Morty fans and curious customers. According to various reports, most locations received only about 20 packets of Sichuan sauce to distribute. Some stores received even fewer. This tiny supply was nowhere near sufficient to meet the demand from the hundreds or even thousands of people who showed up at various locations. Rick and Morty fans took the promotion extremely seriously. Some camped out overnight at McDonald's locations to ensure they would be first in line. Others drove for hours, crossing state lines to reach participating restaurants. One couple reportedly drove from Canada to the United States specifically to get Sichuan sauce, only to be disappointed. People dressed up in Rick and Morty costumes, treating the event like a major cultural happening rather than a fast food promotion. The scene at various McDonald's locations on the 7th of October 2017 quickly descended into chaos. Long lines formed around blocks, with hundreds of people waiting for their chance at the limited sauce packets. When customers at the front of lines learned that the sauce had already run out or that there were only a handful of packets available, anger and frustration erupted. What should have been a fun promotional event turned into a public relations disaster. At a McDonald's location on La Brea Avenue in Los Angeles, the situation became particularly tense. Over 500 Rick and Morty fans showed up, but the restaurant had only 20 packets of sauce to distribute. When this was announced, the crowd became increasingly agitated. People began chanting, "Sichuan sauce!" and, "When I say Sichuan, you say sauce." The situation escalated to the point where police had to be called to the scene. Video footage from various locations showed shocking scenes of normally peaceful fast food restaurants surrounded by angry crowds. In some places, people were pushing and shoving to get closer to the entrance. There were reports of customers jumping on counters and causing disturbances inside the restaurants. One viral video showed a young man jumping on a counter at a McDonald's, shouting, "I'm Pickle Rick," before falling to the floor and making strange screeching sounds. While the person later claimed this was intended as a joke, the video became symbolic of how out of control the situation had become. Police were dispatched to multiple McDonald's locations across the country to manage crowds and maintain order. In Los Angeles, police cars lined up outside the La Brea location as officers worked to disperse the frustrated crowd. Similar scenes played out in Florida, the San Francisco Bay Area, and other cities where large numbers of fans had gathered. McDonald's employees, who were completely unprepared for this level of chaos, found themselves dealing with one of the worst working days many had experienced. The aftermath of the Sichuan sauce debacle was swift and widespread. Social media exploded with angry posts from disappointed fans, criticism of McDonald's handling of the promotion, and mockery of people who had taken the situation too seriously. The hashtag related to Sichuan sauce trended on Twitter as thousands of people shared their experiences and frustrations. Some fans threatened to boycott McDonald's, while others called for class action lawsuits claiming false advertising. McDonald's issued an apology on their official Twitter account on the 8th of October 2017, acknowledging that they had not prepared adequately. The tweet read, "Sichuan sauce is coming back once again this winter, and instead of being one day only and limited to select restaurants, we're bringing more, a lot more, so that any fan who's willing to do whatever it takes for Sichuan sauce will only have to ask for it at a nearby McDonald's." The company promised to make things right by bringing back the sauce in much larger quantities. Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon were quick to distance themselves and the show from the chaos. Adult Swim released a statement clarifying, "This was not a promotion from Adult Swim or anyone officially connected to Rick and Morty." Roiland tweeted that he was not happy with how McDonald's handled the situation, writing, "For your information, we had nothing to do with this McDonald's stuff. Not happy divided by how this was handled. Please be cool to the employees, it's not their fault." The economic impact of the failed promotion was evident in the secondary market that quickly emerged. On eBay, individual packets of Sichuan sauce began selling for astronomical prices. Single 1-ounce packets sold for over $250 in some cases. A 3-pack of sauce packets sold for $848.88, meaning someone paid nearly $283 per packet. These were completed auctions with actual payments made, not just listing prices. The sauce had become a bizarre collectible item with value far exceeding any reasonable assessment of what teriyaki-based dipping sauce should cost. The media coverage of the Sichuan sauce incident was extensive and largely negative for all parties involved. News outlets around the world reported on the chaos, often with a tone of disbelief and mockery. The incident became a cautionary tale about internet culture, fan-based behavior, and corporate attempts to capitalize on viral moments. It also raised questions about whether certain segments of Rick and Morty's fanbase had become too intense and obsessive. For Rick and Morty itself, the Sichuan sauce incident was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it demonstrated the show's incredible cultural influence and ability to drive real-world behavior. On the other hand, it associated the show with some of its most aggressive and embarrassing fan behavior. Many commentators pointed out that Rick's character in the show is meant to be a cautionary example of nihilistic behavior, not a role model, yet some fans seem to miss this point entirely. McDonald's eventually made good on their promise to bring back Sichuan sauce in much larger quantities. In February 2018, the company released approximately 20 million packets of the sauce at participating locations across the United States. This time, the rollout went much more smoothly, with adequate supply meeting the demand. Many fans who had missed out the first time were finally able to try the sauce that had caused so much controversy. However, the actual taste of Sichuan sauce proved somewhat anticlimactic for many people. Reviews were mixed, with many describing it as simply a standard sweet and sour or teriyaki-style sauce with nothing particularly special about it. Food critic Robert Sietsema described it as jaw-achingly sweet. The sauce was reminiscent of Chinese-American restaurant dishes from the 1990 seconds, with more sugar than spice. Many fans concluded that the sauce couldn't possibly live up to the hype that had built around it. Former McDonald's chef Mike Harach later spoke about the incident in a TikTok video, revealing that he believed there might have been legal issues between McDonald's and Rick and Morty as a result of the promotion. He stated, "It is my understanding that there is litigation, or was, and neither of them are allowed to talk about each other at all whatsoever. While this was never officially confirmed, it would explain why subsequent Rick and Morty seasons made no further references to McDonald's or Sichuan sauce." The Sichuan sauce incident became a defining moment in Rick and Morty's cultural history, though not necessarily in a positive way. It demonstrated the intense devotion of the show's fan base, while also highlighting some of the more problematic aspects of that devotion. The event became frequently cited in discussions about toxic fandom and the dangers of parasocial relationships between fans and media properties. For McDonald's, the Sichuan sauce promotion became a case study in how not to handle a viral marketing opportunity. The company's failure to adequately prepare for predictable demand, combined with poor communication about availability, turned what could have been a triumph into a public relations nightmare. The incident also showed the risks companies face when trying to capitalize on internet culture and meme-driven marketing. The sauce has made occasional returns to McDonald's menus since 2018, but never with the same level of fanfare or chaos. In 2022, it was available through the McDonald's app for a limited time. The company learned from the October 2017 disaster and ensured adequate supply for subsequent releases. However, by that point, the cultural moment had passed, and Sichuan sauce was just another limited-time menu item rather than a phenomenon. Looking back at the Sichuan sauce incident, it stands as a perfect example of how a joke in an animated television show can spiral into real-world consequences that nobody could have predicted. What started as Rick Sanchez ranting about a discontinued dipping sauce ended with police at McDonald's locations and sauce packets selling for hundreds of dollars on eBay. The incident demonstrated the power of Rick and Morty's cultural influence, while also serving as a reminder of how quickly things can get out of hand when corporate marketing, internet culture, and passionate fandoms collide. The McDonald's Sichuan sauce incident began when Rick and Morty's Season 3 premiere featured Rick obsessing over a discontinued 1,998 McDonald's sauce. Fans created petitions with 50,000 signatures, prompting McDonald's to bring it back for one day on the 7th of October 2017. However, stores only received about 20 packets each, while hundreds of fans showed up, causing riots and requiring police intervention at locations nationwide. Packets sold on eBay for hundreds of dollars, and McDonald's apologized, promising to bring back the sauce in February 2018 with 20 million packets. The incident became a notorious example of corporate promotion gone wrong and extreme fandom behavior. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how Justin Roiland actually got drunk to voice Rick in one episode, one of the most unusual behind-the-scenes stories from Rick and Morty involves Justin Roiland, the show's co-creator and original voice of both title characters, literally getting drunk at work to record dialogue for an episode. This wasn't a case of someone showing up intoxicated by accident. It was a deliberate creative choice, encouraged by Dan Harmon, to achieve a specific performance goal. The result was a recording session that became legendary among the show's production staff and fans, demonstrating the extreme lengths the creators were willing to go for authenticity. The episode in question was Season 3, Episode 4, which is titled Vindicators 3: The Return of Worldender. In this episode, Rick assembles a team of superheroes called the Vindicators to fight a villain named Worldender. However, Rick gets extremely drunk during the adventure and creates an elaborate series of challenges and traps that the team must navigate. The episode required Rick to be more intoxicated than usual, which is saying something considering the character is rarely completely sober. Dan Harmon, who co-created the show with Roiland, felt that the episode's story demanded Rick to be especially drunk. The character needed to sound authentically wasted, slurring words and displaying the kind of incoherent rambling that comes with serious intoxication. While Roiland was skilled at voicing Rick's typical level of drunkenness, this episode required something more extreme. Harmon made the decision to encourage Roiland to actually drink alcohol during the recording session to achieve the most authentic performance possible. According to Harmon, he told Roiland, "In episode 304, we need to see Rick get especially drunk, so I encourage Justin to method act. I understand things got a little creative." This statement reveals that the drinking was not only approved but actively encouraged by the show's co-creator. The term method acting typically refers to actors immersing themselves completely in their roles, sometimes using personal experiences or extreme techniques to achieve authentic performances. In this case, the method was simply drinking enough alcohol to actually be drunk. The recording session itself has become the stuff of legend in Rick and Morty lore. Video footage of Roiland recording his lines while intoxicated eventually made its way online and went viral. Fans were simultaneously amazed and amused to see the creative process behind one of their favorite episodes. The video showed Roiland in the recording booth, clearly under the influence of alcohol, delivering lines with genuine drunken slurring and improvisation that would have been difficult to fake convincingly. In the footage, Roiland can be seen struggling with his lines in ways that feel authentic to actual intoxication. His timing is off, his enunciation is impaired, and he goes off on tangents that seem to come from nowhere. These aren't the carefully controlled performances of an actor pretending to be drunk. These are the genuine vocalizations of someone who has had multiple drinks and is trying to work through a script. The result is simultaneously funny and slightly concerning to watch. What makes this story particularly interesting is how it reflects the show's commitment to authenticity and performance. Voice acting for animation typically happens in a controlled environment where actors deliver clean, precise performances that can be easily edited. The idea of intentionally impairing a voice actor's abilities seems counterintuitive to the normal production process. However, Harmon and Roiland were willing to break conventional rules to achieve the specific quality they wanted for this episode. The drinking session was reportedly fueled by tequila, according to various accounts from people familiar with the recording. Tequila is known for producing particularly strong effects, and it's easy to imagine how multiple shots would have affected Roiland's ability to perform. The choice of tequila over other alcoholic beverages may have been deliberate, as different types of alcohol can produce different kinds of intoxication. Tequila tends to lower inhibitions significantly and can lead to more unpredictable behavior. The improvisation that came out of this drunk recording session was apparently quite creative, even if much of it couldn't be used in the final episode. Harmon noted that things got a little creative, suggesting that Roiland went in directions that were either too extreme for broadcast or simply didn't fit the episode's needs. This kind of improvisation is part of what made Roiland's performances as Rick and Morty special. He was known for adding spontaneous elements that made the characters feel more alive and unpredictable. From a production standpoint, this method of recording created both opportunities and challenges. The authentic, drunken quality of the performance gave the episode a unique feel that distinguished it from other Rick and Morty episodes. Rick's extreme intoxication became a key part of the story, driving the plot forward as the other characters had to deal with the consequences of his drunken scheming. The performance added layers of comedy that came from genuine impairment rather than acted approximation. However, recording with an intoxicated voice actor also presented practical difficulties. Drunk people are not reliable performers. They make mistakes, lose their place in scripts, and may need many more takes to get usable material. The editing process likely required significant work to piece together coherent dialogue from the various takes. Sound engineers and editors would have had to carefully select the best moments and assemble them into performances that served the story while maintaining the authentic drunken quality. The fact that Dan Harmon actively encouraged this approach says something about his philosophy as a creator and showrunner. Harmon has always been known for his dedication to achieving specific creative visions, sometimes at the cost of conventional production practices. He's willing to take risks and try unusual methods if he believes they will result in better content. Encouraging Roiland to get drunk for a recording session is certainly an unconventional choice, but it aligned with the show's overall approach of pushing boundaries. This story also reflects the close working relationship between Harmon and Roiland at the time. For Harmon to suggest this approach and for Roiland to agree required a level of trust and shared creative vision. They both had to believe that the end result would justify the unusual means. The fact that the episode turned out well and fans responded positively suggests that their instincts were correct, even if the method was questionable from a traditional production standpoint. The viral nature of the recording footage brought attention to the show's unconventional production methods. Fans were fascinated to see behind the curtain and understand how their favorite animated show was made. Some viewers found it hilarious that someone was essentially paid to get drunk at work as part of their job. Others appreciated the dedication to authenticity and the willingness to try something different to achieve the desired result. However, the story also raised some questions about workplace practices and professionalism in the entertainment industry. While the situation was consensual and produced good results, the idea of encouraging someone to become intoxicated at work would be problematic in most professional settings. The entertainment industry, and particularly animation production, operates under different rules than typical workplaces, but it still highlighted the sometimes chaotic nature of creative work. It's worth noting that this drunk recording session happened during Season 3, which was produced before the serious allegations against Justin Roiland that emerged years later. At the time, this story was seen as a funny and quirky behind-the-scenes anecdote that demonstrated the show's commitment to creative excellence. In retrospect, knowing about Roiland's later behavior and eventual firing from the show, some fans have reassessed these stories about his conduct during production. The episode Vindicators 3, the return of World Ender that resulted from this drunk recording session, was well received by fans and critics. The storyline, which involves Rick creating deadly challenges while blackout drunk that the Vindicators team must solve, benefits from the authentic quality of Roiland's intoxicated performance. The episode explores themes of ego, superhero tropes, and the consequences of reckless behavior, all enhanced by Rick's genuinely impaired state. From a voice acting perspective, this approach was both impressive and controversial. On one hand, it demonstrated Roiland's willingness to fully commit to a performance, even if it meant putting himself in an impaired state. On the other hand, it set a precedent that could be seen as unprofessional or even dangerous. Voice actors are typically expected to create authentic-sounding performances through skill and technique, not by actually experiencing the states they're portraying. The success of this particular recording session shouldn't be seen as an endorsement of getting drunk for work purposes. It was a specific creative choice made for a specific episode by people who felt they needed that approach to achieve their vision. It's not a standard practice in animation production, nor should it be. The story is interesting precisely because it's unusual and unconventional, not because it represents a model that other productions should follow. Comparing this approach to other voice acting work on Rick and Morty highlights how different the two title characters were to perform. Morty's voice requires a different kind of energy and control than Rick's. While Rick can be sloppy, slurring, and incoherent, Morty needs to maintain a certain level of anxious clarity even in stressful situations. Roiland had to switch between these very different vocal performances, sometimes in the same recording session, which required significant skill and versatility. The drunk recording session has become part of Rick and Morty mythology, frequently mentioned in discussions about the show's production and the creative process behind animation. It represents the kind of extreme commitment to artistic vision that characterized the show's early seasons. Whether this commitment was admirable or excessive depends on one's perspective, but it undeniably contributed to creating a memorable episode. Looking at the broader context of Rick and Morty's production, this story fits into a pattern of unconventional methods and willingness to break rules in service of creative goals. The show has always been willing to try unusual approaches, from its crude origins as Doc and Marty to its experimental episodes and bold narrative choices. The drunk recording session was just another example of the creators' willingness to do whatever they felt was necessary to make the best show possible. Since Roiland's departure from the show in 2023, new voice actors Ian Cardoni and Harry Belden have taken over the roles of Rick and Morty. They presumably achieve Rick's drunken quality through traditional voice acting techniques rather than actual intoxication. This represents a return to more conventional production methods, though the show continues to maintain the creative spirit that led to unusual decisions like the drunk recording session. The story of Justin Roiland getting drunk to voice Rick serves as a reminder that creative work sometimes involves unusual methods and unconventional approaches. While it shouldn't be romanticized or seen as a standard practice, it demonstrates the lengths that creators will go to achieve their artistic vision. The resulting episode was successful, the fans enjoyed it, and it became a memorable part of Rick and Morty's history, even if the production method was highly unusual. For Season 3, Episode 4, Vindicators 3, The Return of Worldender, Dan Harmon encouraged Justin Roiland to actually get drunk while recording Rick's dialogue to achieve authentic extreme intoxication for the episode. Harmon told Roiland to method act and later noted that things got a little creative. Video footage of the recording session went viral, showing Roiland genuinely intoxicated, reportedly on tequila, delivering slurred lines and improvised content in the recording booth. While this unconventional approach produced the desired authentic performance for the episode, it highlighted the show's willingness to break traditional production rules to achieve specific creative visions. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how the animation production moved from Vancouver to Ireland for Season 7, one of the most significant behind-the-scenes changes in Rick and Morty's production history occurred between Seasons 6 and 7, when the animation work shifted from Bardell Entertainment in Vancouver, Canada, to Lighthouse Studios in Kilkenny, Ireland. This transition represented a major logistical challenge and marked a new chapter in the show's technical production, though the change was largely invisible to viewers watching the finished episodes. The move was particularly notable given that Bardell had been the sole animation studio for Rick and Morty since the show's inception in 2013. Bardell Entertainment had been responsible for bringing Rick and Morty to life visually for the first 6 seasons. Located in Vancouver, British Columbia, Bardell was founded in 1987 by Barry Ward and his wife Delna Bassania. The studio's name actually comes from combining parts of the founders' first names. By the time Rick and Morty began production, Bardell had established itself as one of the premier animation studios in North America, working on various high-profile projects for major networks and streaming services. The relationship between Rick and Morty and Bardell Entertainment had been long and successful. Bardell's animators had developed a deep understanding of the show's visual style, character designs, and the specific technical requirements needed to bring Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland's scripts to life. The studio had animated over 60 episodes across 6 seasons, developing efficient workflows and building a team specifically skilled in the show's particular aesthetic and animation needs. Bardell Entertainment wasn't just known for Rick and Morty. The studio had built an impressive portfolio of animated series, including Teen Titans Go, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and The Dragon Prince. This diverse experience meant they brought professional expertise and technical capability to every project they worked on. For Rick and Morty, Bardell provided the consistent quality that helped the show maintain its visual identity across multiple seasons. The animation process at Bardell involved hundreds of artists and technicians working on different aspects of production. Character designers would create the look of new characters, background artists would paint the environments, animators would bring everything to motion, and color artists would ensure everything looked cohesive. This complex pipeline required careful coordination and significant technical infrastructure. Moving this entire operation to a different studio represented a massive undertaking. Lighthouse Studios, which took over animation duties for Season 7, is located in Kilkenny, Ireland. The studio was founded much more recently than Bardell, having been established in 2017. Despite being relatively new, Lighthouse had quickly built a reputation for high-quality 2D animation work. Before taking on Rick and Morty, the studio had worked on notable projects including the Bob's Burgers movie for 20th Century Studios and the Cuphead show for Netflix. The decision to move animation production from Canada to Ireland likely involved multiple factors. International animation production often considers tax incentives, labor costs, and availability of skilled animators. Ireland has been actively working to establish itself as a hub for animation production, offering various incentives to attract international projects. The Irish government has invested significantly in developing the country's animation industry, creating opportunities for studios like Lighthouse to compete for major productions. From Lighthouse Studios' perspective, securing Rick and Morty as a client represented a major achievement. The show was one of the most successful animated series on television, with a massive fan base and significant cultural impact. Being chosen to animate such a high-profile production validated Lighthouse's capabilities and positioned the studio for future growth. It demonstrated that a relatively young Irish studio could compete with established North American animation houses. The transition between studios required careful planning and coordination. Animation studios don't just receive scripts and start drawing. They need detailed information about character models, color palettes, background designs, and countless other technical specifications. All of this information had to be transferred from Bardell to Lighthouse, ensuring continuity in the show's visual appearance. Even small inconsistencies in character proportions or color choices could be noticeable to dedicated fans. One of the biggest challenges in moving animation production is maintaining visual consistency. Rick and Morty has a distinctive art style that fans have come to expect. The characters have specific proportions, the backgrounds have a particular look, and the overall aesthetic has remained relatively consistent across seasons. Lighthouse Studios had to study previous episodes carefully, understanding not just what things looked like, but why they looked that way. They needed to replicate design choices that had evolved over 6 seasons at Bardell. The animation team at Lighthouse Studios faced the pressure of working on a beloved show with high expectations from both the production team and fans. Any noticeable decline in animation quality or departure from the established style would likely be criticized. The studio needed to prove they could not only match Bardell's work but potentially improve upon it or at least bring their own strengths to the production while maintaining consistency. Season 7 premiered on the 15th of October 2023, marking the debut of both the new animation studio and the new voice actors who replaced Justin Roiland. This combination of major changes behind the scenes made Season 7 a particularly significant transition point for the show. Fans were watching carefully to see how these changes would affect the final product. The fact that the animation transition was handled smoothly, with most viewers not noticing any significant difference, spoke to Lighthouse Studios' skill and professionalism. The move to Ireland also had implications for the show's production schedule and workflow. Time zone differences between Ireland and California, where much of the show's production is based, would have required adjustments to how teams communicated and collaborated. Digital tools and online collaboration platforms have made international production more feasible, but coordinating across different continents still presents challenges that didn't exist when everything was happening in North America. For the animation staff at Bardell Entertainment, losing Rick and Morty as a client meant significant changes. The show had been a major part of their business for years, employing numerous artists and technicians. However, Bardell continued to work on other successful projects and remained a thriving animation studio. The company had built relationships with multiple clients and wasn't dependent on any single show for its success. Interestingly, the arrangement between Rick and Morty and animation studios wasn't permanent with Lighthouse Studios. Starting with Season 8, which premiered in May 2025, animation production returned to Bardell Entertainment in Vancouver. This meant that Lighthouse Studios only handled Season 7 before the show moved back to its original animation home. The reasons for this return to Bardell weren't publicly detailed, but it suggests that the relationship with Lighthouse was always intended to be temporary or that circumstances changed to make returning to Bardell preferable. The temporary nature of Lighthouse's involvement raises questions about what prompted the initial move and the subsequent return. It's possible that Bardell was unavailable for Season 7 due to other commitments, and Lighthouse was brought in to maintain production schedules. Alternatively, the move might have been an experiment to see if production could be successfully handled elsewhere, with the return to Bardell indicating a preference for the established relationship. From a technical standpoint, the animation process for Rick and Morty involves sophisticated software and workflows. Modern animation studios use programs like Toon Boom Harmony for 2D animation, along with various tools for coloring, compositing, and effects. Both Bardell and Lighthouse would have been using similar software, which helped ensure technical compatibility and made the transition more manageable. The digital nature of modern animation made it easier to transfer assets and information between studios. The animation industry has increasingly become globalized, with major productions often involving teams spread across multiple countries. Rick and Morty's shift between Canadian and Irish studios reflects this broader trend. Studios are chosen based on capabilities, availability, and cost considerations rather than just geographic proximity to other production elements. This globalization has created opportunities for animation studios around the world while also introducing new coordination challenges. For viewers of Rick and Morty, the move between animation studios was largely transparent. The show maintained its visual consistency, with characters looking and moving as expected. The backgrounds retained their distinctive style, and the overall aesthetic remained true to what fans had come to love. This seamless transition was a testament to the professionalism of both Lighthouse Studios in executing the work and the production team in managing the transition. The fact that animation could move between studios on different continents without noticeably affecting the final product demonstrates how mature the animation industry has become. Standardized processes, digital tools, and professional expertise allow for this kind of flexibility. However, it also shows that the creative vision and quality control provided by the show's creators and production team are just as important as the technical execution by the animation studio. Season 7's animation by Lighthouse Studios received no significant criticism from fans or critics. The episodes looked like Rick and Morty, maintaining the show's visual identity despite being produced by a different team in a different country. This success validated the decision to move production and proved that Lighthouse Studios was capable of handling one of television's most popular animated series. The smooth transition helped maintain momentum for the show during a period of significant behind-the-scenes changes. The return to Bardell Entertainment for Season 8 brought production full circle, reuniting Rick and Morty with the studio that had animated the majority of its episodes. This return suggested that whatever reasons prompted the move to Lighthouse, they were temporary. Perhaps Bardell's schedule had opened up, or perhaps the production team preferred working with the studio that had such extensive experience with the show. The return indicated that the relationship between Rick and Morty and Bardell Entertainment remained strong. Looking at the broader animation industry, Rick and Morty's movement between studios illustrates how shows are increasingly willing to change production partners when circumstances warrant it. This flexibility allows productions to continue without being entirely dependent on a single studio's availability or capacity. However, it also requires careful management to ensure quality and consistency are maintained through such transitions. The technical achievement of moving complex animation production between countries and studios shouldn't be underestimated. Every character model, every background design, every color palette, and countless other technical specifications had to be transferred and implemented correctly. The teams at both Bardell and Lighthouse worked to ensure this transition happened smoothly, protecting the show's visual integrity while meeting production deadlines. For Lighthouse Studios, their work on Season 7 of Rick and Morty stands as a significant achievement in their portfolio. Successfully animating one of television's most beloved animated series demonstrated their capabilities to potential clients and established them as a serious player in the international animation industry. Even though their time with Rick and Morty was limited to one season, it represented an important milestone in the studio's development. The animation production history of Rick and Morty from Bardell to Lighthouse and back to Bardell reflects the complex realities of modern television production. Shows must adapt to changing circumstances, whether that means moving between animation studios, replacing voice actors, or adjusting to other behind-the-scenes changes. What matters most is maintaining the quality and consistency that fans expect, regardless of where or by whom the work is actually performed. Rick and Morty's animation production moved from Bardell Entertainment in Vancouver, Canada, which had animated seasons 1 to 6 since 2013, to Lighthouse Studios in Kilkenny, Ireland for Season 7. Lighthouse, founded in 2017, had previously worked on the Bob's Burgers movie and the Cuphead show. The transition required transferring all character models, designs, and technical specifications to maintain visual consistency. Season 7 premiered the 15th of October 2023, with the animation change going largely unnoticed by viewers. However, production returned to Bardell Entertainment for Season 8 inches 2025, making Lighthouse's involvement limited to just one season. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland met at Channel 101 Film Festival, the origin story of Rick and Morty's creative partnership begins at Channel 101, a monthly short film festival in Los Angeles that would prove to be the crucial meeting ground for Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland. This unconventional venue, where amateur filmmakers competed for audience votes with 5-minute TV pilots, created the perfect environment for two creative minds with very different backgrounds to discover their complementary talents. Without Channel 101, Rick and Morty as we know it would never have existed, and the landscape of adult animation would look very different today. Channel 101 was co-founded by Dan Harmon and Rob Schrab as a monthly screening event with a unique format. Unlike traditional film festivals that simply showcase work, Channel 101 operated more like a television network run by the audience. Filmmakers would submit short films designed as TV pilots, typically under 5 minutes in length. These pilots would be screened before a live audience at a theater in Los Angeles, and the audience would vote on which shows should continue as series for the next month's screening. The concept was brilliantly simple yet revolutionary. A panel of previously successful Channel 101 creators would select which new pilots to screen alongside established shows that had earned their spots through audience votes. If a show received enough votes, it would continue with a new episode the following month. Shows that failed to make the cut were considered failed pilots, while those that never made it to screening were rejected pilots. This democratic approach to programming put creative control directly in the hands of viewers. Dan Harmon created Channel 101 Inches 2003 along with Rob Schrab, who would later work as a writer and producer on Rick and Morty. At the time, Harmon was developing his approach to storytelling and comedy, experimenting with narrative structures and comedic formats. Channel 101 gave him a platform to test ideas and refine his craft while also discovering new talent. The festival attracted creative people who wanted to push boundaries and experiment with unconventional comedy. Justin Roiland was working as a producer on reality television programming when he discovered Channel 101. He began submitting content to the festival approximately 1 year after its launch in 2004. Roiland's background was quite different from Harmon's. He hadn't studied writing or narrative structure in the same formal way. Instead, Roiland brought a raw, instinctive approach to comedy that often relied on shock value and deliberately offensive humor to get reactions from audiences. The content that Roiland submitted to Channel 101 was described as sick and twisted by those who saw it. His shorts typically featured extreme violence, crude humor, and intentionally disturbing elements designed to shock viewers. This approach often resulted in confused reactions from the Channel 101 audience, who weren't always sure how to respond to Roiland's particular brand of humor. Many people found his work uncomfortable or off-putting, unsure whether they should laugh or be disturbed. However, Dan Harmon saw something special in Justin Roiland's work that others missed. While most people reacted to Roiland's shorts with confusion or discomfort, Harmon recognized an underlying creativity and comedic instinct worth nurturing. Harmon appreciated the boldness of Roiland's approach and the willingness to take risks that other creators avoided. He understood that beneath the shock value and crude humor was a genuinely original comedic voice that just needed refinement and direction. The connection between Harmon and Roiland wasn't immediate or obvious. They came from different backgrounds and had different approaches to comedy. Harmon was more intellectual and structured in his thinking, having developed theories about story structure and character development. Roiland was more instinctive and spontaneous, creating content that came from gut feelings rather than analytical planning. Yet these differences would ultimately prove complementary rather than conflicting. One of Roiland's early Channel 101 projects was a series called House of Cosbys, which depicted a superfan of Bill Cosby who creates clones of the comedian. This series demonstrated Roiland's ability to take absurd premises and develop them into ongoing narratives. The show actually became successful at Channel 101, continuing for multiple episodes before legal pressure from Bill Cosby's representatives forced Roiland to stop producing it. This experience with cease and desist letters would later inspire the creation of The Real Animated Adventures of Doc and Marty. The creative relationship between Harmon and Roiland developed gradually through Channel 101. They began collaborating on various projects, with Harmon providing structure and narrative guidance, while Roiland contributed raw creative energy and unique comedic sensibilities. This collaboration allowed both creators to work in ways that played to their strengths while compensating for their individual weaknesses. Harmon could help shape Roiland's wild ideas into coherent narratives, while Roiland could inject spontaneity and unpredictability into Harmon's more calculated approaches. Channel 101 served as an incubator for the creative partnership that would eventually produce Rick and Morty. The festival's format encouraged experimentation and risk-taking because there were no real consequences for failure. If a pilot didn't work, you could try something completely different the next month. This freedom to experiment without career-threatening stakes allowed both Harmon and Roiland to develop their skills and discover what worked for them creatively. The festival also created a community of like-minded creators who supported and challenged each other. People who succeeded at Channel 101 formed relationships that often extended beyond the festival itself. Many individuals who participated in Channel 101 would later work together on professional projects. For Harmon and Roiland, the festival provided not just a meeting ground, but an ongoing environment where they could test ideas and refine their collaborative process. When Roiland created The Real Animated Adventures of Doc and Marty in 2006, he submitted it to Channel 101, where the audience's wild reaction demonstrated the character's potential. Dan Harmon described the short as a bastardization, a pornographic vandalization of Back to the Future, but he recognized that underneath the crude humor was something that could be developed into something more substantial. This recognition was crucial because it meant Harmon saw past the shocking surface to the underlying creative possibilities. The Doc and Marty shorts created for Channel 101 established the voice work that would eventually define Rick and Morty. Roiland developed his distinctive vocal performances for both characters during these early shorts, discovering the burping, stammering quality that would become Rick's signature and the anxious, stuttering delivery that characterized Morty. These weren't carefully planned character choices, but organic discoveries that emerged through the process of creating content for Channel 101. Years passed between the creation of Doc and Marty at Channel 101 and the development of Rick and Morty for Adult Swim. During this time, both creators pursued other projects. Harmon created and ran the NBC sitcom Community, which became a cult favorite and demonstrated his ability to craft character-driven comedy with emotional depth. Roiland worked in voice acting, contributing to shows like Adventure Time and Fish Hooks, developing his skills as a performer while waiting for the right opportunity to develop his own show. The crucial moment came in 2012 when Dan Harmon was temporarily fired from Community and Adult Swim approached him about creating content for their network. Harmon's first thought was to call Justin Roiland and ask if he had any ideas for an animated series. This instinct to collaborate with Roiland came directly from their years of working together at Channel 101. Harmon knew Roiland's creative strengths and understood how they could work together effectively. When Roiland suggested adapting the Doc and Marty characters into a proper television series, Harmon immediately understood the potential. He could see how the dynamic between the characters could be expanded into a full show with supporting cast members and ongoing storylines. The foundation laid at Channel 101 years earlier suddenly became the basis for what would become one of the most successful animated series in television history. The working relationship that developed at Channel 101 shaped how Rick and Morty was created and produced. Harmon brought his story circle technique and understanding of narrative structure to organize the chaos of Roiland's creative impulses. Roiland contributed the voices, the absurdist humor, and the willingness to push boundaries that made the show distinctive. Together, they created something neither could have achieved alone, a synthesis that emerged directly from their years of collaboration at Channel 101. Channel 101 also influenced the content and style of Rick and Morty itself. The festival's emphasis on unconventional storytelling and willingness to break rules carried over into the show. Rick and Morty frequently breaks the fourth wall, experiments with narrative structure, and refuses to follow standard television conventions. These tendencies can be traced back to the creative freedom and experimental spirit of Channel 101, where breaking rules was encouraged rather than punished. The festival's format of creating ongoing series from short pilots also influenced how Rick and Morty approaches continuity and serialization. While each episode can stand alone, there are ongoing story threads and character developments that reward dedicated viewers. This balance between episodic and serialized storytelling reflects lessons learned from creating content at Channel 101, where shows needed to work as individual episodes while building ongoing narratives. Many other people who participated in Channel 101 alongside Harmon and Roiland have contributed to Rick and Morty over the years. The festival created a network of creative relationships that extended into professional television production. Writers, directors, and performers who met at Channel 101 have worked on Rick and Morty in various capacities, bringing the collaborative spirit of the festival into the show's production. Rob Schrab, who co-founded Channel 101 with Harmon, has directed several episodes of Rick and Morty and served as a writer and producer on the show. His comic book series Scud the Disposable Assassin was actually promoted in one of the Doc and Marty shorts, and the concept inspired the Mr. Meeseeks characters in Rick and Morty. This kind of cross-pollination of ideas demonstrates how the Channel 101 community influenced the show's development. The relationship between Harmon and Roiland that began at Channel 101 eventually became strained, with the two creators barely speaking by 2019, according to later interviews. However, their initial meeting and early collaboration at the festival was crucial to Rick and Morty's creation. The show exists because these two very different creators found each other at Channel 101 and discovered they could work together effectively despite their differences. Channel 101 continues to operate today, still providing a platform for aspiring creators to test ideas and find collaborators. The festival has become part of Los Angeles' creative culture, known as a place where unconventional talent can emerge and develop. Many successful writers, directors, and performers have participated in Channel 101 over the years, using it as a training ground and networking opportunity, much like Harmon and Roiland did. The story of how Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland met at Channel 101 demonstrates the importance of creative communities and experimental spaces in developing new talent. Without a venue that encouraged risk-taking and unconventional comedy, Roiland might never have found an audience for his strange humor. Without someone like Harmon who could recognize the potential in Roiland's work, that talent might never have been refined into something accessible to mainstream audiences. Looking back at the origin of Rick and Morty, Channel 101 stands as the essential catalyst that brought together two creative minds who would change adult animation. The festival provided the meeting ground, the collaborative environment, and the creative freedom necessary for Harmon and Roiland to discover their partnership. Rick and Morty exists because a small film festival in Los Angeles created space for experimental comedy and unconventional talent to flourish. Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland met at Channel 101, a monthly short film festival in Los Angeles that Harmon co-founded in 2003. The festival featured a unique format where filmmakers submitted 5-minute TV pilots and audiences voted on which shows would continue. Roiland began submitting sick and twisted shorts to the festival in 2004 that confused audiences, but Harmon recognized his creative potential and began collaborating with him. This relationship led to Roiland creating The Real Animated Adventures of Doc and Marty for Channel 101 Inches 2006, which years later became the basis for Rick and Morty when Adult Swim approached Harmon in 2012. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how Chris Parnell, Jerry's voice, usually nails lines on the first take 5. Chris Parnell, the voice actor who brings Jerry Smith to life on Rick and Morty, has earned a remarkable reputation among the show's production team for his exceptional ability to deliver perfect performances on his first attempt. According to series co-creator Justin Roiland, Parnell typically nails each of his lines on the very first take, a skill that stands out in an industry where voice actors are routinely asked to record dozens of takes for every line. This remarkable consistency and professionalism has made Parnell an invaluable part of Rick and Morty's production process, even though the demanding nature of animation means he still must record multiple takes regardless of his first take perfection. Chris Parnell came to Rick and Morty with an impressive background in comedy and voice acting. He first gained widespread recognition as a cast member on Saturday Night Live, where he worked from 1998 to 2006 across 2 separate stints. During his time on SNL, Parnell became known for his ability to deliver lines with perfect deadpan timing and his apparent immunity to breaking character. His fellow cast members nicknamed him the Iceman because he could maintain his composure even when everyone around him was laughing, most famously demonstrated in the legendary More Cowbell sketch where he was the only performer who didn't break. After leaving Saturday Night Live, Parnell continued building his career in comedy with notable roles including Dr. Leo Spaceman on the NBC sitcom 30 Rock, appearing in over 24 episodes of that series. However, his distinctive deep voice led him increasingly toward voice acting work, where he found tremendous success. Before joining Rick and Morty, Parnell had already established himself as a prominent voice actor, providing the narrator for the PBS children's series Word Girl for 127 episodes, and voicing Cyril Figgis on the animated spy comedy Archer. When Parnell joined Rick and Morty in 2013 to voice Jerry Smith, he brought this extensive experience and professional discipline to the role. Jerry is Morty's father and Beth's husband, characterized as insecure, simple-minded, and often the butt of jokes within the Smith family. The character requires a specific vocal quality that Parnell delivers perfectly, a combination of false confidence, underlying anxiety, and pathetic desperation that makes Jerry simultaneously frustrating and sympathetic. The fact that Parnell consistently nails his lines on the first take is particularly impressive given the technical demands of animation voice acting. Unlike live-action performances where actors can rely on facial expressions and body language, voice actors must convey all emotion and character through vocal performance alone. Every nuance must come through in the voice, the hesitation, the confidence, the fear, the anger, whatever the scene requires. Parnell manages to hit all these marks perfectly from his very first attempt. Justin Roiland specifically praised this ability in interviews, noting that while Parnell usually gets everything right on the first take, the nature of animation production requires actors to do many more takes anyway. According to Roiland, voice actors on Rick and Morty are typically required to complete over 30 takes for each line due to the precautionary nature of animation production. This means that even though Parnell delivers a perfect performance initially, he must continue recording the same lines dozens more times to provide editors and directors with options. This requirement for multiple takes in animation stems from several practical considerations. Animation is produced over many months, and the creative direction of a scene might change during that time. Having multiple takes with different emotional reads gives editors flexibility to adjust performances to match evolving creative visions. Additionally, technical issues like audio quality, background noise, or recording artifacts might not be noticed until later in production, making it essential to have backup takes available. The process must be somewhat frustrating for a perfectionist like Parnell, who knows he's already delivered exactly what's needed but must continue repeating lines over and over. However, his professionalism means he approaches every take with the same commitment and quality, ensuring that take number 30 is just as good as take number 1. This consistency is crucial because editors never know which take they might ultimately need to use when assembling the final episode. Parnell's ability to nail lines on the first take likely comes from his extensive experience in both live performance and voice acting. His years on Saturday Night Live taught him how to quickly understand what a scene requires and deliver it efficiently. In sketch comedy, there's rarely time for multiple takes during dress rehearsal or live performance, so actors must get things right immediately. This skill translated perfectly to voice acting, where the ability to understand and execute direction quickly is highly valued. In interviews about his voice acting work, Parnell has discussed the unique challenges of the medium. He explained that the hardest thing is just remembering to really be present and try to act it well and not just kind of say the lines. He noted that voice actors must funnel all their energy through their voice without being able to rely on physical performance. This requires intense focus and presence, skills that Parnell has clearly mastered given his first take success rate. Interestingly, Parnell has been doing voice work since childhood. His father was also a voiceover professional, and Parnell would participate in his father's commercials when he was young. He even served as the morning announcer at his high school, developing his distinctive voice and learning how to use it effectively from an early age. This lifelong familiarity with voice work certainly contributes to his ability to deliver perfect performances so consistently. The character of Jerry Smith plays a crucial role in Rick and Morty's family dynamics, and Parnell's vocal performance is essential to making Jerry work as a character. Jerry could easily be purely annoying or completely pathetic, but Parnell manages to give him enough humanity and occasional moments of dignity that viewers can still care about him even while laughing at his failures. This balance requires subtle vocal choices that Parnell executes perfectly, apparently from his very first take. Parnell's deadpan delivery style, honed during his years on Saturday Night Live and 30 Rock, serves Jerry's character particularly well. Jerry often says ridiculous things with complete sincerity, believing he's being profound or clever when he's actually being foolish. Parnell plays these moments completely straight, never indicating through his vocal performance that Jerry should realize how stupid he sounds. This commitment to the character's perspective makes Jerry's delusions more funny and more tragic simultaneously. The technical precision required for Parnell's first take success involves more than just reading lines correctly. Voice actors must match specific timing for animation, hitting marks where mouth movements occur and ensuring their delivery fits the pacing of scenes. They must maintain consistent character voices across recording sessions that might be weeks or months apart. They must take direction quickly and adjust performances based on feedback. Parnell excels at all these technical aspects while also delivering emotionally authentic performances. Recording sessions for Rick and Morty typically involve actors working individually in the booth rather than recording together. This means Parnell must deliver his lines without the benefit of playing off other actors' performances. He must imagine the context of scenes and respond appropriately to dialogue he's only reading on a page, not hearing from another performer. The fact that he can do this perfectly on the first take demonstrates remarkable skill and imagination. The production team's recognition of Parnell's first-take ability shows how much they value his contribution to the show. While all the voice actors on Rick and Morty are talented professionals, having someone who consistently delivers exactly what's needed immediately provides a reliable foundation for production. Directors and producers know they can count on Parnell to understand the character and the scene requirements without extensive direction or multiple attempts to get it right. This reliability becomes even more valuable given the complex production schedule of animated television. Recording sessions must be completed before animation begins, and any need for additional recording later in production can be costly and complicated. Having a voice actor who gets everything right the first time reduces the risk of needing to bring actors back for additional sessions, helping keep production on schedule and within budget. Parnell's professionalism extends beyond just nailing his lines. He's known for being easy to work with, taking direction well, and maintaining a positive attitude even during long recording sessions that require dozens of takes of the same lines. This professional demeanor makes him a favorite among directors and producers who appreciate not just his talent but also his collaborative spirit and work ethic. The contrast between Parnell's controlled, professional approach and the more chaotic energy that characterize some other aspects of Rick and Morty's production is interesting. While Justin Roiland was known for extensive improvisation and sometimes unpredictable recording sessions, Parnell represented stability and consistency. This balance of different working styles likely contributed to the show's overall quality, with Parnell's precision complementing the more spontaneous elements. Comparing Parnell's work to his colleagues on Rick and Morty highlights his particular skills. While Roiland voiced both Rick and Morty with extensive improvisation and multiple takes to capture spontaneous moments, Parnell approached Jerry with more precision and planning. Both approaches are valid and valuable, but they require different skills and sensibilities. The show benefits from having both types of performers contributing to its overall sound and feel. Parnell's ability to nail lines on the first take also speaks to the quality of the scripts and direction he receives. Voice actors perform best when they fully understand what's required, which means the scripts must clearly communicate character motivations and emotions, and directors must provide clear guidance when needed. The fact that Parnell consistently gets it right immediately suggests that Rick and Morty's production provides actors with the information and support they need to succeed. Since Justin Roiland's departure from the show and the introduction of new voice actors for Rick and Morty, Chris Parnell's steady presence has become even more valuable. During a period of significant transition, having a reliable, consistent performer like Parnell helps maintain continuity and quality. His continued involvement provides stability for both the production team and the audience as the show adapts to major changes. The recognition that Parnell usually nails his lines on the first take is both a compliment to his exceptional skill and an acknowledgement of the sometimes frustrating realities of animation production. In an ideal world, his perfect first takes would be all that's needed. However, the practical demands of animation mean he must continue delivering those same perfect performances over and over, providing the production team with the flexibility they need to create the best possible final product. This combination of exceptional skill and professional dedication makes Chris Parnell an invaluable member of the Rick and Morty team. His ability to consistently deliver perfect performances on the first take demonstrates his mastery of voice acting craft, while his willingness to continue recording dozens more shows his understanding of production needs and commitment to the show's success. Jerry Smith works as a character in large part because Chris Parnell brings exactly the right vocal quality and performance choices to every single line, apparently from the very first attempt. According to Justin Roiland, Chris Parnell, who voices Jerry Smith, typically nails each of his lines on the very first take. However, due to animation production requirements, actors must still record over 30 takes per line to provide editors with options and backup recordings. Parnell came to Rick and Morty with extensive experience from Saturday Night Live, where he was nicknamed the Iceman for never breaking character, and voice acting roles on shows like Archer and Word Girl. His lifelong voice work experience, starting with his father's commercials and high school announcements, contributes to his remarkable consistency and ability to deliver perfect performances immediately. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how Bryan Cranston auditioned for Jerry while still on Breaking Bad, one of the most fascinating behind-the-scenes stories from Rick and Morty's early development involves Bryan Cranston, one of television's most acclaimed actors, auditioning for the role of Jerry Smith while he was simultaneously starring in Breaking Bad, widely considered one of the greatest television series ever made. This remarkable moment in casting history demonstrates both Cranston's dedication to his craft and his willingness to pursue diverse opportunities, even while working on a career-defining role. The timing of this audition makes it particularly noteworthy, as it occurred during a period when Cranston was receiving unprecedented praise for his dramatic work as Walter White. Breaking Bad aired its series finale in September 2013, concluding a run that had transformed Bryan Cranston from a respected character actor into one of the most celebrated performers in television history. His portrayal of Walter White, a high school chemistry teacher turned methamphetamine manufacturer, earned him 4 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series and cemented his place in television history. The show's final season aired during the summer and early fall of 2013, with the finale becoming a cultural event watched by millions. Rick and Morty premiered its first season in December 2013, just 3 months after Breaking Bad's finale aired. This tight timeline means that when Cranston auditioned for the role of Jerry Smith on Rick and Morty, he was still deeply involved in Breaking Bad's final season. The scheduling overlap demonstrates Cranston's remarkable work ethic and his ability to juggle multiple projects simultaneously, even while shouldering the enormous responsibility of starring in one of television's most intense and demanding dramatic roles. The fact that Cranston was interested in voicing a character on an Adult Swim animated series while Breaking Bad was at the height of its acclaim speaks to his versatility as a performer and his understanding of different types of acting work. Many actors at the peak of dramatic success might have focused exclusively on similarly prestigious projects, but Cranston has always maintained a diverse career that includes comedy, drama, and voice acting. His willingness to audition for Rick and Morty showed he understood the value of good writing and interesting characters, regardless of the medium or perceived prestige level. Bryan Cranston's comedy credentials were actually well established long before Breaking Bad made him famous for dramatic work. He had a memorable recurring role as Tim Whatley, Jerry Seinfeld's dentist, on the sitcom Seinfeld during the 1,990 seconds. More significantly, he starred as Hal, the well-meaning but hapless father on Malcolm in the Middle, for 7 seasons from 2000 to 2006. This role earned him 3 Emmy nominations and demonstrated his exceptional talent for physical comedy and comedic timing. The character of Hal actually shared some similarities with Jerry Smith in terms of being an often ineffectual father figure trying to maintain authority in a chaotic household. The role of Jerry Smith that Cranston auditioned for ultimately went to Chris Parnell, whose distinctive voice and comedic background made him perfect for the character. However, it's intriguing to imagine how different Jerry might have been with Cranston's voice and interpretation. Cranston brings a particular energy to comedy roles, often playing characters with a mix of confidence and underlying desperation that could have worked well for Jerry's characterization as an insecure man, constantly seeking validation. At the time of his audition, Adult Swim was still developing its understanding of what Rick and Morty would become. The network had given the green light for a pilot from Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, but the show was still in early development stages. Having a name actor like Bryan Cranston audition for a role would have been both exciting and potentially challenging for the production. His involvement could have brought additional prestige and attention to the show, but it also might have created expectations or complications given his high profile and busy schedule. The audition process for animated shows typically differs from live-action casting. Voice actors read sides in a recording booth, allowing directors and producers to focus purely on the vocal performance without being influenced by physical appearance or on-screen presence. For Cranston, this meant demonstrating his ability to convey Jerry's character through voice alone, capturing the insecurity, neediness, and occasional attempts at authority that define the character. Adult Swim initially had some reservations about the show's vocal performances, particularly regarding Justin Roiland voicing both Rick and Morty. The network worried that having one person voice both main characters might be limiting or confusing for audiences. To address these concerns and demonstrate the show's potential, Dan Harmon wrote 4 short premises in which Morty took a more assertive role and sent them to Mike Lazo, who was head of Adult Swim at the time. This suggests the network was carefully considering all aspects of the show's voice cast during development. The fact that Cranston was willing to audition rather than simply being offered the role also speaks to the professional standards of Rick and Morty's production. Many shows might have immediately cast a major star like Cranston if he expressed interest, but the Rick and Morty team apparently wanted to ensure they found the absolute right voice for each character through a proper audition process. This commitment to finding the perfect fit rather than simply going with the biggest name available helped ensure the show's quality. Cranston's audition timing during Breaking Bad's final season reveals something about how actors manage their careers during landmark projects. Rather than assuming Breaking Bad's success would lead to unlimited opportunities, Cranston was actively pursuing new work and exploring different types of roles. This proactive approach has served him well throughout his career, allowing him to transition successfully between comedy and drama, television and film, live action and voice work. The role of Jerry Smith has become an integral part of Rick and Morty's success, with Chris Parnell's performance perfectly capturing the character's pathetic, yet somehow sympathetic nature. Jerry serves as a grounding presence in the show, representing conventional thinking and normal concerns in contrast to Rick's nihilistic genius and the family's interdimensional adventures. While we'll never know exactly how Cranston would have approached the role, Parnell's interpretation has become definitive and essential to the show's dynamic. Bryan Cranston has continued working in animation and voice acting throughout his career, demonstrating that his interest in Rick and Morty wasn't just a one-time curiosity. He's provided voices for numerous animated projects, including starring roles in films like Isle of Dogs and appearances in shows like Family Guy, Robot Chicken, and others. His distinctive voice and ability to convey emotion through vocal performance alone make him well-suited for animation work. The intersection of Breaking Bad and Rick and Morty represents an interesting moment in television history when prestige drama and adult animation were both experiencing creative renaissances. Breaking Bad helped establish that cable television could produce cinema-quality dramatic storytelling, while Rick and Morty would soon demonstrate that animated comedy could tackle complex themes and emotional depth while maintaining irreverent humor. Both shows pushed the boundaries of what television could achieve in their respective genres. Looking at the timeline more closely, Rick and Morty's first season would have been in development and production during 2012 and 2013, overlapping with Breaking Bad's final season, which was split into 2 parts airing in summer 2012 and summer 2013. This means Cranston's audition likely occurred during one of the most intense periods of his career, when Breaking Bad's conclusion was approaching and the show was receiving more attention and praise than ever before. The story of Cranston's audition also highlights how even the most successful actors face rejection and competition in the entertainment industry. Despite his Emmy wins and critical acclaim for Breaking Bad, Cranston still had to audition for roles and wasn't guaranteed to book every part he pursued. This reality of the acting profession applies at all levels, from unknown performers to established stars, and Cranston's willingness to participate in standard audition processes demonstrates his professionalism and respect for the craft. Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland have both spoken in interviews about the casting process for Rick and Morty, emphasizing the importance of finding the right voices for each character. While they haven't provided extensive details about Cranston's specific audition, the fact that he was considered for Jerry indicates the production team was exploring various options and taking casting seriously. The ultimate decision to go with Chris Parnell proved to be the right choice for the show's needs, but the consideration of someone with Cranston's talent and profile shows the level of quality the production was aiming for. The cultural impact of both Breaking Bad and Rick and Morty has been substantial, though in very different ways. Breaking Bad redefined television drama and influenced countless shows that followed, while Rick and Morty became a phenomenon in adult animation and internet culture. That these 2 important shows briefly intersected through Cranston's audition creates an interesting footnote in television history, connecting 2 very different but equally influential series. Bryan Cranston's post-Breaking Bad career has been remarkably diverse, including dramatic roles in films like Trumbo and The Upside, comedic performances in movies like Why Him, and numerous voice acting projects. His willingness to audition for Rick and Morty during Breaking Bad demonstrates the approach that has kept his career varied and interesting, never being too proud or too busy to pursue projects that interest him, regardless of format or perceived status. For fans of both Breaking Bad and Rick and Morty, the knowledge that Walter White himself auditioned to voice Jerry Smith creates an amusing alternate reality to imagine. The contrast between Cranston's most famous dramatic role and the comedic, often pathetic character of Jerry couldn't be more stark. Yet Cranston's background in comedy, particularly his work on Malcolm in the Middle, shows he could have brought the necessary qualities to Jerry's character if he had been cast. The audition also serves as a reminder that casting decisions involve many factors beyond just talent. Chemistry with other cast members, scheduling availability, vocal qualities that complement the show's overall sound, and sometimes simply the indefinable rightness of a particular voice for a character all play roles in final casting choices. While Bryan Cranston certainly had the talent to voice Jerry Smith, Chris Parnell proved to be the perfect fit for what Rick and Morty needed. This story has become one of the many interesting footnotes in Rick and Morty's development history, alongside tales of the pilot being written in 6 hours and the show's origins in the crude Doc and Marty shorts. It demonstrates that even unconventional animated comedies on cable networks attract attention from top-tier talent, and that actors at the highest levels of success remain interested in diverse, creatively interesting projects regardless of the platform or medium. Bryan Cranston auditioned for the role of Jerry Smith on Rick and Morty while simultaneously starring in Breaking Bad's final season in 2013. Rick and Morty premiered in December 2013, just 3 months after Breaking Bad's finale, meaning Cranston pursued this voice acting opportunity during the height of his dramatic success. The role ultimately went to Chris Parnell, whose voice and comedic style proved perfect for Jerry's character. Cranston's willingness to audition demonstrated his career-long commitment to diverse roles across comedy and drama, building on his previous comedy work on Seinfeld and Malcolm in the Middle. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how the show was renewed through season 12 inches 2024. In 2024, Rick and Morty received yet another major vote of confidence from Adult Swim when the network announced that the series had been renewed for 2 additional seasons, extending the show's run through season 12. This announcement came during a panel at New York Comic Con, one of the largest pop culture conventions in the United States, and represented a significant commitment to the show's future. The renewal was particularly notable because it came after the show had successfully navigated one of its most challenging transitions, replacing Justin Roiland as the voice of both title characters following his departure in 2023. The timing of this announcement was strategically important for both the network and fans. By 2024, Rick and Morty had already been renewed through Season 10 as part of the massive 70-episode deal that had been announced in 2018. That original deal had guaranteed the show's future for years and allowed the production team to plan long-term story arcs with confidence. The additional renewal through Season 12 extended this security even further, ensuring that Rick and Morty would remain a cornerstone of Adult Swim's programming lineup for the foreseeable future. The New York Comic Con announcement location was fitting for a show with such a devoted fan base. Comic-Con events have become important venues for major entertainment announcements, offering companies direct access to their most passionate fans and generating immediate buzz through social media and press coverage. For Rick and Morty, which has always had a strong presence in fan culture and internet communities, Comic-Con provided the perfect stage to celebrate the show's continued success. This renewal through Season 12 meant that Rick and Morty would produce at least 120 episodes total, assuming standard season lengths of 10 episodes each. This milestone would place the show among the most successful adult animated series in television history. For context, many acclaimed animated shows never reached this level of longevity. The renewal demonstrated that Adult Swim viewed Rick and Morty not just as a current success, but as a property with lasting value that could continue generating revenue and maintaining audience interest for years to come. The announcement came at a crucial moment in the show's history. Season 7 had premiered in October 2023, with new voice actors Ian Cardoni and Harry Belden replacing Justin Roiland as Rick and Morty respectively. This transition represented the most significant change in the show's production since its inception. Many fans had worried about whether Rick and Morty could maintain its quality and appeal without one of its original creators voicing the main characters. The renewal through Season 12 signaled that Adult Swim had confidence the show could thrive despite this major change. The success of Season 7 with the new voice actors likely played a significant role in the network's decision to extend the series. Cardoni and Belden had proven they could capture the essence of Rick and Morty while bringing their own subtle interpretations to the roles. Critics and fans generally responded positively to the new voices, acknowledging that while they were different from Roiland's original performances, they maintained the characters' core qualities and allowed the show to continue without major disruption. From a business perspective, the renewal through Season 12 made sense for Adult Swim and its parent company Warner Bros. Discovery. Rick and Morty had become one of the most valuable properties in adult animation, generating revenue not just from television broadcasts but from streaming deals, merchandise, video games, comic books, and various other ancillary markets. The show had proven its ability to attract and retain audiences across multiple platforms, making it a safe investment for long-term planning. The renewal also provided stability for the show's large production team. Animated series require the coordinated efforts of hundreds of people, including writers, voice actors, animators, directors, editors, composers, and many other professionals. Knowing that the show would continue through at least Season 12 allowed all these individuals to plan their careers and commitments accordingly. It also made it easier to retain top talent who might otherwise move on to other projects if the show's future seemed uncertain. For the writer's room, the extended renewal offered creative freedom to develop longer story arcs and more complex character development. When a show's future is uncertain, writers must balance telling complete stories with leaving threads open for potential future seasons. With guaranteed seasons extending through Season 12, the writing team could plan multi-season narrative arcs with confidence, knowing they would have the opportunity to properly develop and resolve storylines over time. The announcement at New York Comic Con 2024 was met with enthusiasm from fans attending the panel and from the broader Rick and Morty community online. Social media erupted with reactions to the news, with fans expressing excitement about guaranteed future seasons and speculation about where the show might go with such a long runway ahead. The renewal became trending news across various platforms, demonstrating the show's continued cultural relevance and the passionate engagement of its fan base. The extended renewal also represented a statement about Adult Swim's programming strategy. The network had built its reputation on taking creative risks with unconventional programming, but Rick and Morty had evolved from a risky bet into a proven commodity. The decision to commit to Season 12 showed that Adult Swim was willing to stick with successful properties for the long term, providing stability that could attract other creators and projects to the network. Comparing Rick and Morty's renewal through Season 12 to other animated series highlights its exceptional success. The Simpsons, which is the longest-running American animated series, took decades to reach similar episode counts. South Park, another long-running adult animated comedy, has maintained success through a different model of shorter seasons and more flexible production. Rick and Morty's ability to secure such long-term commitments while maintaining relatively standard season lengths demonstrates its unique position in the animated television landscape. The renewal announcement also addressed practical production concerns. Animated series take significant time to produce, with the process from writing to final animation often taking a year or more per season. By announcing renewal through Season 12 inches 2024, Adult Swim was essentially guaranteeing that Rick and Morty would be in production for several more years. This long timeline requires advanced planning and commitment of resources, which the network was clearly willing to provide. The confidence shown by this renewal is particularly impressive given the significant behind-the-scenes challenges Rick and Morty had faced. Beyond replacing Roiland's voice work, the show had dealt with production delays, changing animation studios, and the general complexities of maintaining quality across multiple seasons. The fact that Adult Swim remained committed despite these challenges speaks to the show's fundamental strength and the value it provides to the network. For Dan Harmon, who became the sole showrunner after Roiland's departure, the renewal through Season 12 represented both an opportunity and a responsibility. He now had the challenge of guiding Rick and Morty through at least several more seasons without his original creative partner. However, he also had the security of knowing the show would continue, allowing him to make creative decisions with a long-term perspective rather than worrying about each season potentially being the last. The announcement also had implications for the show's place in popular culture. Rick and Morty had already established itself as more than just a television show, becoming a cultural phenomenon that influenced memes, inspired merchandise, and sparked countless discussions about science fiction, philosophy, and storytelling. The renewal through season 12 ensured that this cultural presence would continue evolving and expanding, giving new generations of viewers the opportunity to discover the show. The business model for Rick and Morty had evolved significantly since its premiere in 2013. Streaming platforms had become increasingly important for reaching audiences, and the show's availability on services like Hulu and Max had introduced it to viewers who might not regularly watch Adult Swim. The renewal through season 12 considered these changing distribution models and the show's value across multiple platforms, not just traditional television broadcasts. The renewal also reflected changing patterns in how audiences consume television. Binge-watching had become the dominant viewing method for many people, and having a large library of episodes made shows more attractive to streaming platforms and viewers. By committing to season 12, Adult Swim was ensuring Rick and Morty would have a substantial catalog that could continue attracting new viewers while satisfying longtime fans. For the voice acting cast beyond the title characters, the renewal provided welcome job security. Chris Parnell as Jerry, Spencer Grammer as Summer, and Sarah Chalk as Beth had all been with the show since the beginning, and the extended renewal meant they would continue bringing these characters to life for years to come. The stability of the main cast helped maintain continuity and consistency even as other aspects of production evolved. The announcement at New York Comic Con 2024 was carefully orchestrated to maximize impact. The panel where the renewal was revealed likely included key members of the production team, possibly including Dan Harmon himself, who could speak directly to fans about the show's future direction. These direct interactions between creators and fans help maintain the strong community connection that has been crucial to Rick and Morty's success. Looking forward, the renewal through season 12 set expectations for what Rick and Morty could achieve in its extended run. With guaranteed seasons stretching years into the future, the show had the opportunity to tell more ambitious stories, explore character development more deeply, and potentially take creative risks that might not be possible with less certain futures. The question became not whether Rick and Morty would continue, but what new directions it might explore with such a long runway ahead. The 2024 renewal through season 12 stands as a testament to Rick and Morty's remarkable success and enduring appeal. From its origins as a crude web series to becoming one of television's most successful animated comedies, the show had proven its ability to evolve, overcome challenges, and maintain quality across multiple seasons. The commitment to season 12 represented Adult Swim's belief that Rick and Morty's best episodes might still be ahead and that the show would continue entertaining and surprising audiences for years to come. At New York Comic Con in 2024, Adult Swim announced that Rick and Morty had been renewed for 2 additional seasons, extending the show through season 12. This came after the original 70-episode deal from 2018 had guaranteed the show through season 10. The renewal was particularly significant because it followed the successful transition to new voice actors Ian Cardoni and Harry Belden in season 7 after Justin Roiland's departure in 2023. The announcement demonstrated Adult Swim's confidence in the show's ability to maintain quality and success despite major behind-the-scenes changes, guaranteeing Rick and Morty would reach at least 120 total episodes. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how Mr. Poopy Butthole was originally going to be Bullet Boy. One of Rick and Morty's most beloved characters, Mr. Poopy Butthole, very nearly had a completely different appearance that would have dramatically changed his place in the show's history. According to show writer and producer Mike McMahon, the character who became the cheerful, top hat wearing yellow figure that fans adore was originally conceived as Bullet Boy, described as a bullet with goofy eyes, arms, and legs. This revelation came when McMahon discovered an old pre-outlined beat sheet for the season 2 episode Total Recall during spring cleaning and shared it on social media, giving fans a glimpse into how one of the show's most memorable characters almost looked completely different. The episode Total Recall premiered on the 16th of August 2015 as the 4th episode of Rick and Morty's 2nd season. The episode featured a unique premise where the Smith family becomes infected by alien parasites that multiply by implanting false memories into people's minds. These parasites take the form of various colorful characters that the family believes have always been part of their lives. The challenge for the family is determining which characters are real and which are parasites, leading to a tense situation where they must kill anyone they can't remember having a bad experience with. Mr. Poopy Butthole appears in Total Recall as a longtime family friend, a small yellow creature wearing a tiny top hat and speaking with an enthusiastic, upbeat manner. His distinctive catchphrase, "ooh-wee," and his overwhelmingly positive personality made him immediately memorable to viewers. Throughout the episode, he seems like an obvious candidate to be one of the parasites since he appears so suddenly and the audience has never seen him before. However, the episode's shocking ending reveals that Mr. Poopy Butthole is actually real when Beth shoots him, believing him to be a parasite, only to discover she's just wounded an actual family friend. The original conception of this character as Bullet Boy would have created a very different dynamic. While the personality and role in the story remained essentially the same in the early outline, the visual design of a bullet with arms, legs, and goofy eyes would have given the character a much different feel. Bullets are associated with violence and weaponry, which contrasts sharply with the innocent, friendly personality the character needed to convey. The absurdity would still have been present, but it would have been a harder, more aggressive kind of absurdity rather than the softer, sillier quality that Mr. Poopy Butthole ultimately embodied. Mike McMahon revealed on social media that the transformation from Bullet Boy to Mr. Poopy Butthole was based on a character created by Justin Roiland called Titty Longballs. This character, which existed in Roiland's earlier sketch work, had a similar elongated body shape that inspired Mr. Poopy Butthole's distinctive appearance. The name Titty Longballs gives some indication of Roiland's crude sense of humor, but the visual concept of a tall, thin body with a small head apparently translated well to the more family-friendly design that became Mr. Poopy Butthole. The decision to change from Bullet Boy to Mr. Poopy Butthole proved crucial to the character's success and longevity. Mr. Poopy Butthole's design is inherently funny and endearing. His small stature, his disproportionately large top hat, his stick-thin arms and legs, and his bright yellow coloring all contribute to a character that looks both ridiculous and somehow adorable. This visual appeal made him immediately popular with fans, leading to his return in multiple episodes and post-credit scenes throughout the series. The character's distinctive appearance also made him perfect for merchandising. Mr. Poopy Butthole plush toys, action figures, and other merchandise have been popular sellers for Rick and Morty, contributing to the show's substantial revenue from licensed products. It's difficult to imagine Bullet Boy having the same merchandising appeal. The more aggressive, weapon-like design would have been harder to translate into cute collectibles that fans would want to display or give as gifts. The name Mr. Poopy Butthole itself is deliberately juvenile and absurd, fitting Rick and Morty's style of combining crude humor with genuine storytelling. While the name might seem silly or even off-putting at first, it becomes endearing through the character's wholesome personality and the affection the Smith family clearly has for him. The contrast between the crude name and the character's genuinely good nature creates comedy while also making him memorable. Bullet Boy, while absurd in its own way, wouldn't have had quite the same memorable quality. The character's role in Total Recall required someone who could seem simultaneously suspicious and innocent. Mr. Poopy Butthole needed to look unusual enough that viewers would assume he must be one of the parasites, but also harmless and friendly enough that his shooting at the end would feel shocking and wrong. His design achieved this balance perfectly. Bullet Boy might have seemed too obviously absurd, potentially telegraphing either that he was definitely a parasite or definitely not one, rather than maintaining the ambiguity the episode needed. Mr. Poopy Butthole's success led to him becoming a recurring presence in Rick and Morty, particularly in post-credit scenes following season finales. He would address the audience directly, breaking the fourth wall to discuss the episode that just aired and tease upcoming seasons. These appearances became a beloved tradition for fans, who looked forward to Mr. Poopy Butthole's check-ins and his updates on his personal life, including his education, career, marriage, and eventual family troubles. The character's ability to break the fourth wall and speak directly to the audience required a design that was approachable and non-threatening. Mr. Poopy Butthole's friendly appearance made these direct addresses feel natural and enjoyable. Viewers felt like they were getting updates from a friend rather than being lectured to by a character. Bullet Boy's more aggressive design might have made these fourth wall breaks feel different, potentially less warm and more jarring. In subsequent appearances, Mr. Poopy Butthole's design remained consistent, helping establish him as a stable presence in Rick and Morty's chaotic multiverse. He appeared in the Season 2 finale, The Wedding Squanchers, in Season 3's Morty's Mindblowers, and The Rick-Churian Morty Date, and in Season 4's One Crew Over the Crew's Morty. Each appearance reinforced his place in the show's mythology and deepened fans' affection for the character. His consistent visual design helped make him feel like a real, established part of the Rick and Morty universe rather than a one-off joke. The character's popularity also led to expanded roles in other Rick and Morty media. He appeared in comic books, including a limited series called Rick and Morty Presents Lil Poopy Superstar, which explored his backstory and revealed he was a famous movie star on his home planet before coming to Earth. These additional stories would have been much harder to develop if the character had been designed as Bullet Boy rather than Mr. Poopy Butthole. The more appealing design invited expansion and exploration of the character in ways that might not have happened with the original concept. The transformation from Bullet Boy to Mr. Poopy Butthole also demonstrates the creative process behind Rick and Morty, where initial ideas can evolve significantly before reaching the screen. Writers and creators constantly refine concepts, and sometimes a character's visual design changes even after the story role has been established. In this case, keeping the basic character function while changing the appearance resulted in something far more effective and memorable than the original idea. Mike McMahan's decision to share the original Bullet Boy concept with fans on social media created an interesting moment of transparency about the creative process. Fans got to see how close they came to getting a very different character, and it helped them appreciate how small decisions can have big impacts on final products. The story became part of Rick and Morty lore, frequently discussed by fans and included in articles about behind-the-scenes trivia. The influence of Justin Roiland's earlier character Titty Longballs on Mr. Poopy Butthole's design shows how creators often draw on their own previous work when developing new projects. Roiland had a history of creating characters with crude names and unusual body proportions, and these sensibilities carried over into Rick and Morty. However, the refinement from a character called Titty Longballs to the more broadcast-appropriate Mr. Poopy Butthole shows how Adult Swim worked with Roiland to maintain his creative voice while making it suitable for television. The design change also affected how voice actors approached the character. Justin Roiland voiced Mr. Poopy Butthole in his appearances through Season 6, bringing an enthusiastic, high-pitched quality that matched the character's innocent appearance. The voice he created for Mr. Poopy Butthole became as distinctive as the visual design, with the "ooh-wee" catchphrase becoming instantly recognizable. It's interesting to consider how Roiland might have voiced Bullet Boy differently, potentially with a harder edge that matched the more aggressive visual concept. After Justin Roiland's departure from the show, Mr. Poopy Butthole was recast with voice actor John Allen taking over the role starting with Season 8. The character's established design and personality made this transition smoother, as Allen could maintain the warm, friendly quality that fans expected. If the character had been Bullet Boy with a different energy and tone, the recasting might have been more challenging or noticeable to audiences. The merchandising success of Mr. Poopy Butthole has been substantial, with the character appearing on everything from t-shirts to coffee mugs to collectible figures. His distinctive silhouette makes him easily recognizable even in simplified forms, which is crucial for successful merchandise. The tall, thin body with the tiny top hat creates a unique shape that works well across different products and design applications. Bullet Boy would have lacked this visual distinctiveness, potentially making him less effective as a merchandising icon. The character has also become a symbol of Rick and Morty's ability to create memorable supporting characters who resonate with audiences. While Rick and Morty themselves are the stars, characters like Mr. Poopy Butthole, Mr. Meeseeks, and others have become fan favorites in their own right. Mr. Poopy Butthole's success in this regard owes much to his appealing design, which invites affection and recognition in ways that Bullet Boy likely wouldn't have achieved. Fan artists have embraced Mr. Poopy Butthole, creating countless pieces of fan art featuring the character in various situations and styles. His simple but distinctive design makes him fun to draw while still being recognizable. Online communities dedicated to Rick and Morty frequently feature Mr. Poopy Butthole content, from memes to serious artwork. This fan engagement has helped keep the character relevant and beloved even between his official appearances on the show. The story of Mr. Poopy Butthole's evolution from Bullet Boy serves as a reminder that sometimes the best creative decisions come from reconsidering initial ideas. The writers and creators of Rick and Morty were willing to change course when they recognized that a different approach would work better. This flexibility and willingness to revise contributed to creating one of the show's most enduringly popular characters, proving that the right design can make all the difference in how audiences connect with a character. Rick and Morty writer Mike McMahan revealed that Mr. Poopy Butthole was originally conceived as Bullet Boy, a bullet with goofy eyes, arms, and legs in the original outline for Total Recall. McMahan shared a photo of the old beat sheet on social media, noting the change happened 4 years prior to his 2018 post. The final design was based on Justin Roiland's earlier character called Titty Longballs. The transformation to Mr. Poopy Butthole's friendly yellow appearance with a top hat proved crucial to the character's success, making him more endearing, merchandisable, and ultimately one of the show's most beloved supporting characters. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how the theme song was originally written for a rejected show called Dog World, the iconic theme song that opens every episode of Rick and Morty with its synthesizer-driven melody and sci-fi atmosphere has become one of the most recognizable pieces of music in modern animated television. However, this memorable composition wasn't originally created for Rick and Morty at all. The theme was actually written by composer Ryan Elder for a completely different animated show that Justin Roiland had developed called Dog World, which was pitched to Cartoon Network but ultimately rejected. This recycling of musical material turned out to be a fortunate decision, as the theme became an integral part of Rick and Morty's identity and helped establish the show's distinctive tone from its very first episode. Dog World was one of several animated pilots that Justin Roiland created before Rick and Morty became a reality. According to interviews, Roiland had developed 3 failed animated pilots for Fox and at least 1 for Cartoon Network before finally finding success with Adult Swim. These early failures were frustrating for Roiland, who had described feeling burned out with the television development process by the time he and Dan Harmon began working on Rick and Morty. Each rejection meant months or even years of work that never reached audiences, a common but disheartening reality for creators trying to break into television animation. The specific details of what Dog World was about remain somewhat vague, but the title suggests it involved canine characters in some capacity. What we do know is that Cartoon Network commissioned a pilot from Roiland, which meant he had the opportunity to develop the show through initial stages of production, including creating a theme song. Ryan Elder, who would become Rick and Morty's primary composer, created the musical theme for this Dog World pilot, crafting a piece that captured the energetic, adventurous spirit that sci-fi and animated comedies often require. Ryan Elder's involvement with Justin Roiland's projects predated Rick and Morty, establishing a working relationship that would prove crucial to the show's eventual success. Elder understood Roiland's sensibilities and what kind of music would complement his particular brand of humor and storytelling. The theme he created for Dog World featured synthesizers and electronic elements that gave it a retro sci-fi feel, reminiscent of classic science fiction television themes while also feeling contemporary and fresh. These qualities made it perfect for repurposing when Rick and Morty needed a theme song. When Dog World was rejected by Cartoon Network, it joined the list of unrealized projects in Roiland's career. However, the theme music that Elder had created didn't have to disappear with the show. When Rick and Morty received the green light from Adult Swim, the production team needed a theme song quickly. Rather than starting from scratch, they recognized that the Dog World theme could work perfectly for their new show. The music's energetic pace, sci-fi atmosphere, and adventurous quality aligned well with Rick and Morty's interdimensional adventures and fast-paced storytelling. The decision to reuse the Dog World theme was both practical and creative. From a practical standpoint, it saved time and resources during the rush to produce the pilot episode, which was already being written in just 6 hours in Dan Harmon's unfurnished office. From a creative standpoint, the theme simply worked. Its synthesizer-driven sound evoked classic sci-fi shows like Doctor Who, which Dan Harmon had cited as a major influence on Rick and Morty. The music captured the sense of adventure and possibility that comes with traveling through space and dimensions, perfectly setting the tone for each episode. The theme song serves multiple functions in Rick and Morty's opening sequence. It provides energy and momentum that propels viewers into each episode's story. It establishes the show's sci-fi credentials immediately, signaling that audiences are about to watch something involving space travel, advanced technology, and otherworldly adventures. The music also has a slightly chaotic, unpredictable quality that mirrors the show's content, where anything can happen and conventional rules don't always apply. All of these qualities were present in the original Dog World composition, making it adaptable to Rick and Morty's needs. Justin Roiland made a somewhat sarcastic reference to Cartoon Network's rejection of Dog World in the Rick and Morty episode Lawnmower Dog, which aired as the second episode of the first season. The episode's title itself is a play on the Stephen King novella Lawnmower Man, but the dog part of the title also serves as a callback to the rejected show. In the episode, the Smith family's dog Snuffles gains intelligence and eventually leads a dog uprising, with references and visual elements that may have incorporated ideas from the original Dog World concept. This inclusion was Roiland's way of acknowledging the rejected pilot while also making use of ideas he'd developed for that earlier project. The recycling of creative material from failed projects is actually quite common in the entertainment industry, though it's not always publicized. Writers, composers, and other creators often have ideas, scripts, songs, or other elements that don't make it into finished projects for various reasons. When these creators get new opportunities, they frequently revisit this unused material to see if it can be adapted or repurposed for new contexts. In the case of the Dog World theme becoming the Rick and Morty theme, this practice resulted in one of the most successful and recognizable pieces of music in animated television. Ryan Elder would go on to become Rick and Morty's primary composer, creating music for every episode of the series. His work extends far beyond the theme song, encompassing the show's varied musical needs from dramatic underscore to comedic stings to elaborate musical sequences like the Get Schwifty song from Season 2. Elder's ability to capture the show's tone across different musical styles has been crucial to Rick and Morty's success, but it all began with that repurposed theme from Dog World. The theme song's structure is relatively simple but effective. It features a driving rhythm that creates urgency and forward momentum, layered with synthesizer melodies that create the sci-fi atmosphere. The composition is relatively short, lasting only about 30 seconds in its opening credits version, but it makes a strong impression in that brief time. The music is energetic without being overwhelming, catchy without being annoying, and distinctive without being alienating to new viewers. These qualities have helped make it memorable for fans while remaining accessible to first-time viewers. Over the years, the Rick and Morty theme has been remixed, covered, and referenced countless times by fans and musicians. It has become part of internet culture, appearing in memes, mashups, and various creative reinterpretations. This cultural penetration speaks to the theme's effectiveness and memorability. It's worth considering that if the theme had been created specifically for Rick and Morty from the beginning, it might have turned out very differently and potentially less effective. The fact that it was originally created for a different project meant it came without specific expectations attached to Rick and Morty, allowing it to be evaluated purely on its musical merits. The visual opening sequence that accompanies the theme song has varied throughout Rick and Morty's run, with different versions created for different seasons. However, the music has remained largely consistent, providing continuity even as the visuals change. This consistency has helped the theme become even more strongly associated with the show, to the point where hearing those opening notes immediately brings Rick and Morty to mind for most fans. The theme has become sonic branding for the show, as recognizable as any visual logo or character design. The story of the Dog World theme also illustrates Justin Roiland's persistence in pursuing his creative vision despite setbacks. After multiple pilot rejections, including Dog World, he could have given up on creating his own animated series. Instead, he continued developing ideas and maintained relationships with collaborators like Ryan Elder, who could contribute to future projects. When the opportunity for Rick and Morty finally came, Roiland was ready with not just story concepts, but also practical elements like a theme song that could be implemented immediately. Cartoon Network's rejection of Dog World ultimately worked out well for everyone involved. While Cartoon Network missed out on whatever Dog World might have become, they've produced many successful shows and didn't necessarily need another Justin Roiland project. Adult Swim, meanwhile, got Rick and Morty, which became one of their most successful series ever. And the theme song that was created for the rejected pilot found new life as the opening music for a show that would become a cultural phenomenon. The theme song's journey from Dog World to Rick and Morty also demonstrates how timing and context matter in creative work. The same piece of music might work perfectly for one project while being unsuitable for another. The Dog World theme found its ideal home in Rick and Morty, where its particular qualities aligned perfectly with the show's needs. If Dog World had been picked up by Cartoon Network, that theme would have been associated with a different show, and Rick and Morty would have needed different music. The rejection that seemed like a failure at the time ultimately led to a better outcome. Ryan Elder has discussed his work on Rick and Morty in various interviews, though he hasn't extensively detailed the Dog World origins of the theme song. His approach to composing for the show involves close collaboration with the creators and careful attention to how music can enhance storytelling. The success of the theme song, regardless of its origins, validated his musical instincts and helped establish him as a sought-after composer for animated television. For fans discovering this piece of Rick and Morty trivia, it adds another layer to their appreciation of the show. The theme song they've heard hundreds of times, that immediately signals the start of a new adventure with Rick and Morty, has its own adventure story of rejection and redemption. It serves as a reminder that creative success often comes from unexpected places, and that what seems like failure in one context can become triumph in another. The practicality of reusing the Dog World theme also reflects the often chaotic nature of television production, especially for new shows with limited budgets and tight schedules. Rick and Morty's first season was produced quickly, and the creators had to make efficient use of available resources. Having a ready-made theme song that worked well for the show eliminated one task from the already overwhelming list of things that needed to be done to get the series on air. This efficiency didn't compromise quality. Instead, it freed up time and energy to focus on other aspects of production. The legacy of the Dog World theme, living on as the Rick and Morty theme, has become a cherished piece of the show's origin story. It connects to the broader narrative of how Rick and Morty came to exist through persistence, creative recycling, and fortunate timing. Just as the show itself evolved from the crude Doc and Marty shorts into something more refined and successful, the theme song evolved from a rejected pilot's music into one of the most recognizable compositions in modern animation. Both stories illustrate that success often requires not just talent and hard work, but also the wisdom to recognize potential and the flexibility to adapt good ideas to new contexts. Rick and Morty's iconic theme song was originally composed by Ryan Elder for Dog World, a rejected animated pilot Justin Roiland had created for Cartoon Network. When Rick and Morty received the green light from Adult Swim, the production team repurposed the Dog World theme, which perfectly captured the sci-fi adventure tone they needed. Roiland later referenced Cartoon Network's rejection in the Season 1 episode Lawnmower Dog, making a sarcastic nod to the failed pilot. The synthesizer-driven theme has become one of animated television's most recognizable pieces of music, proving that creative material from rejected projects can find success in unexpected ways. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to how Justin Roiland was fired from the show in 2023. In January 2023, Rick and Morty experienced one of the most dramatic upheavals in its history when Adult Swim severed ties with Justin Roiland, who had co-created the show with Dan Harmon and voiced both of its title characters since the series began in 2013. The firing came after news broke that Roiland had been charged with felony domestic violence and false imprisonment in connection with an incident from January 2020. This revelation and subsequent termination sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry and the show's fan base, raising serious questions about Rick and Morty's future and whether the series could continue without one of its original creative forces. The criminal charges against Roiland had been filed in Orange County, California, but were kept under seal and not publicly known until NBC News broke the story in January 2023. The charges stemmed from an alleged incident involving an unnamed woman that Roiland was reportedly dating at the time. Specifically, Roiland faced one felony count of domestic battery with corporal injury and one felony count of false imprisonment by menace, violence, fraud, or deceit. These are serious criminal charges that carry significant potential penalties under California law. Roiland had pleaded not guilty to the charges at a pre-trial hearing in January 2023. A hearing was scheduled for the 27th of April 2023 to move forward with the case. However, the situation took a turn in March 2023 when the Orange County District Attorney's Office announced they were dismissing all charges against Roiland due to insufficient evidence. While this dismissal meant Roiland would not face criminal prosecution, the damage to his professional reputation and relationships had already been done. Following the public revelation of the criminal charges, additional allegations emerged regarding Roiland's behavior. Multiple women and non-binary individuals came forward to NBC News with accusations of sexual harassment and inappropriate communications. Some allege that Roiland had sent direct messages to minors through social media, using his position of fame and influence in ways that made recipients uncomfortable. These allegations painted a disturbing pattern of behavior that extended beyond the single criminal incident that had been charged. Adult Swim's response to the public revelation of the charges was swift and decisive. In January 2023, the same month the charges became public, Adult Swim announced that they had cut ties with Roiland and that he would no longer be involved with Rick and Morty. The network emphasized that production on Season 7 would continue and that Roiland's roles would be recast with new voice actors. This rapid action suggested that Adult Swim prioritized distancing itself from the controversy over any concerns about how Roiland's absence might affect the show. The timing of Roiland's removal was particularly notable because Rick and Morty had already been guaranteed through multiple future seasons as part of the massive 70-episode deal signed in 2018. Season 7 was already in production when the charges became public, meaning the show had to quickly adjust to continue without someone who had been integral to its creation and development. The fact that Adult Swim committed to continuing the series, despite losing one of its co-creators, demonstrated the network's confidence that Rick and Morty could survive this transition. Roiland's departure from Rick and Morty was part of a broader professional collapse for the creator. He was also removed from Solar Opposites, another animated series he had co-created for Hulu, where he had been voicing the main character. Additionally, Roiland resigned from Squanch Games, the video game studio he had founded. Within a matter of weeks, Roiland went from being a successful creator with multiple projects across different media to being essentially blacklisted from the entertainment industry. After the criminal charges were dismissed in March 2023, Roiland issued a statement on Twitter expressing relief that the legal case had concluded in his favor. He wrote, "I have always known that these claims were false, and I never had any doubt that this day would come. I'm thankful that this case has been dismissed, but at the same time, I'm still deeply shaken by the horrible lies that were reported about me during this process." However, this statement addressed only the criminal charges, not the broader allegations about his conduct that had emerged from multiple sources. The question of whether Roiland could return to Rick and Morty after the charges were dismissed became a topic of speculation among fans and media observers. However, Adult Swim showed no indication of reversing their decision. The dismissal of criminal charges did not address the other allegations that had been made about Roiland's behavior, and the network had clearly decided to move forward without him regardless of the legal outcome. The decision appeared to be based not just on the criminal case, but on a broader assessment of Roiland's conduct and the risk his association posed to the show's reputation. Dan Harmon, Roiland's former creative partner and co-creator of Rick and Morty, addressed the situation in later interviews. Harmon revealed that his relationship with Roiland had deteriorated significantly in the years before these allegations became public. According to Harmon, tensions between them began emerging after the show's first season was successful. By the time of Season 3, Roiland had reportedly stopped attending writers' room sessions regularly, though he continued to voice Rick and Morty. A mediator had even been brought in to help manage their working relationship. Harmon described feeling frustrated, ashamed, and heartbroken that work he had been proud of could be leveraged to exploit and harm strangers. This statement suggested Harmon felt that Roiland had used the fame and access that came from Rick and Morty's success to engage in inappropriate behavior. The fact that Harmon and Roiland had barely been speaking for years before the allegations emerged meant that Roiland's removal didn't significantly change Harmon's day-to-day involvement with the show, though it did require finding new voice actors. The search for replacement voice actors to play Rick and Morty was conducted with unusual secrecy. Adult Swim announced that the characters would be voiced by sound-alike actors who could replicate the vocal qualities Roiland had established, but did not initially reveal their identities. This approach aimed to maintain some continuity in the characters' voices, while also emphasizing that the show was moving forward under new circumstances. The secrecy also helped protect the new actors from potential backlash or unfair comparisons before audiences had a chance to hear their performances. The broader context of Roiland's firing included increasing attention in the entertainment industry to allegations of abuse and misconduct. The Me Too movement had created an environment where such allegations were taken more seriously and could have significant professional consequences. Companies were becoming more willing to take decisive action against individuals accused of misconduct, even when criminal charges had not resulted in convictions. Adult Swim's rapid response to the Roiland situation reflected this changed landscape. For Rick and Morty's production staff, writers, and other voice actors, Roiland's firing created both challenges and opportunities. The immediate challenge was continuing production without someone who had been central to the show's creation and development. However, some reports suggested that many staff members were relieved to work without Roiland, particularly if the allegations about his behavior were accurate. The firing also elevated Dan Harmon to sole showrunner, giving him more control over the show's creative direction. The impact on Rick and Morty's storytelling and creative direction remained to be seen when Roiland's firing was first announced. Some fans worried that the show couldn't maintain its quality without one of its original creators. Others argued that the writing staff and Dan Harmon's creative vision were more important to the show's success than any single voice actor. The debate highlighted different perspectives on what makes a television show successful and who deserves credit for that success. Roiland's removal from Rick and Morty after the criminal charges and allegations became public served as a high-profile example of how quickly professional situations can change when serious accusations emerge. From Roiland's perspective, he had gone from being one of the most successful creators in animation to being removed from all his projects within weeks. From Adult Swim's perspective, they had made the difficult decision to continue one of their most valuable properties without one of its creators, betting that the show's strength lay in more than just one individual. The legal outcome of the criminal case, with charges being dismissed due to insufficient evidence, complicated the narrative but didn't change the professional consequences. In the entertainment industry, companies often make decisions based on reputational risk and workplace environment concerns, rather than waiting for legal proceedings to conclude. Adult Swim had determined that continuing to work with Roiland posed too great a risk to the show's reputation and the network's image, regardless of how the criminal case resolved. The situation also raised questions about separating art from the artist, a debate that has become increasingly prominent in discussions about entertainment and culture. Some fans argued they could continue enjoying Rick and Morty while acknowledging problems with one of its creators. Others felt that knowing about the allegations changed how they viewed the show and what Roiland had contributed to it. These debates played out across social media, forums, and other spaces where Rick and Morty fans gathered to discuss the show. The firing of Justin Roiland from Rick and Morty in January 2023 represented a watershed moment for the series, forcing it to fundamentally reinvent itself while maintaining the elements that had made it successful. The show would continue with new voice actors, under Dan Harmon's sole creative leadership, carrying the weight of its origins while trying to establish a new identity separate from one of its original creators. The success or failure of this transition would ultimately be judged by audiences when new episodes aired, but the decision to move forward demonstrated Adult Swim's commitment to Rick and Morty as a property that could transcend any single individual's involvement. Summary: in January 2023, Adult Swim fired Justin Roiland from Rick and Morty after felony domestic violence and false imprisonment charges from a 2020 incident became public. Additional allegations of sexual harassment and inappropriate messages to minors subsequently emerged. Though the criminal charges were dismissed in March 2023 due to insufficient evidence, Adult Swim maintained their decision and announced Roiland's voice roles would be recast. Dan Harmon later revealed their relationship had deteriorated years earlier, with Roiland barely attending writers' sessions by season 3. The firing also resulted in Roiland's removal from Solar Opposites and his resignation from Squanch Games. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.